Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions of the thing. This show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, so if you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it, but if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome. And of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. So we've made it to the end, boys. We are wrapping up the Skywalker Saga today here with the Rise of Skywalker. Joining me for that, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron? Do you have your thing prepped and ready to go?
Wookiees stand out in a crowd.
All right. Yes, you
That's
do.
a good one.
Yeah. We have Frank Pisani. How you doing, Frank?
Palpatine is back.
Yes. And
God help us.
And Logan Wilkinson.
I thought that's what you were going to go with.
How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing okay, I will say, after this movie.
Yeah. The dead speak indeed. Yes.
That was my alternate. I almost went with that instead.
I almost went with somehow Palpatine is back.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't say that without exasperating myself because of how bad it is.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Yeah. It's a movie. So yes, this episode is going to be all about Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. This is not the end of our summer of Star Wars. We've kind of said from the beginning, we will continue on with the standalone movies. So we'll be doing the Clone Wars next week, and then we'll do Rogue One and Solo and stuff after that. So, but yes, this is the end of the Nineology Star Wars Skywalker Saga here. A little bit of history on this one. Originally released December 20th, 2019, which feels like a lifetime ago, but also holy hell, that is really recent still. Especially as I was going through the other releases of the time. The first one I pulled in here, nowhere near the December release date, but I did pull it in because Spider-Man Far From Home had come out July 2nd of 2019, and that was, until Black Widow, the last MCU film we had gotten in theaters. Joker came out October 4th of 2019. The Academy Award winner that year, Parasite, came out. The dates on this were weird, but October 5th, 5th or 11th was what I was seeing in terms of the U.S. limited release date, and then it seemed to get a November 8th wide release date. But it had also been at film festivals all throughout the year ahead of that and stuff. Jojo Rabbit came out October 18th. That Nerdy Site launched on November 1st. So, shout out to that silly little milestone.
Hell yeah.
Terminator Dark Fate and The Irishman came out on November 1st. Marriage Story came out November 6th, featuring, of course, Kylo Ren here. Frozen 2 came out November 22nd, about a month before this. Knives Out, Rian Johnson's next thing, came out November 27th. Jumanji: The Next Level came out December 13th, and I think I mentioned this with the last one as well, the first Rock Jumanji movie, the first Dwayne Johnson Jumanji movie, but both of them, I believe, outlasted their equivalent Star Wars pictures in the top 5 because they just had such long tails. Whereas everybody saw Star Wars opening weekend, and then everybody was Rise of Skywalker. I don't need to see that one again. So yeah. On the as counter programming for Star Wars, the end of the Skywalker saga, we got Cats that came out December 20th. One of my least favorite musicals of all time already got a, by most accounts, either terrible or really funny if you're drunk releases. On Christmas that year, December 25th, we got Little Women as well as 1917, a couple other standout films from that year. Movie, yeah. In the early aftermath of this, we got the highest domestic grossing movie of 2020 in Bad Boys for Life, came out January 17th.
As it deserves.
That was my birthday.
I mean, no, that did not deserve to be the highest grossing movie of the year.
Bad Boys for Life is great.
It was fine. it was fine. I mean, it's arguably the best of the Bad Boys movies, but that's not necessarily a high bar.
Listen, the Bad Boys movies have always been absolute fat, awful, burnt, on fire trash, and that's why we love them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Bad Boys movies are way better than that, but
on
no, they're garbo, but they're great garbo. I love them. I'll eat that garbage food all day long, even if it's on fire.
On February,
Bad Boys 1 and 3, also.
Okay, I mean, I've heard.
Well, Bad Boys 2 gives you woosah.
Yeah, that's iconic.
I was gonna say I'd heard better things about Bad Boys 2 than the first Bad Boys. But
really interesting.
I mean, yeah, like admittedly, I've not seen Bad Boys 1 or 2. I did see Bad Boys for Life though, and I was like, I mean, it's a good thing that I didn't really need to like. It was like, okay, I know that Will Smith and
Martin Lawrence.
There you go. I know that they're like the buddy cops after all these years.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it was whatever. It just cracks me up that was the highest grossing movie of that year. Coming in third place in 2020 for highest grossing domestic releases was the next movie on the slate. February 7th was Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn.
Great movie.
God, that was a
fun
year
movie.
ago.
Yeah.
Jesus, that feels so long.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Arguably one of the better, like one of the few good DC films in recent years. And then number 2 at the box office last year domestically, Sonic the Hedgehog came out on Valentine's Day.
Hell yeah!
About a month before everything shut down.
Surprisingly good movie.
Yeah.
Like
I saw that with Frank. Yeah.
We had a great time.
Saw it with Trevor.
I believe we all saw it like at the same time, just a couple states away.
Oh, I forgot. October 4th was when we saw Joker, or like Joker came out, right?
I mean, yeah, and that is. Are you gonna say that's? I don't know if we saw it opening night or if we saw it like sometime later, but yes, that's basically when I invited you to be a part of that nerdy site.
Yeah. Because I was like, man, I'm like, Trevor, I can't believe like I'm done podcasting. Like I'm over it. And you're like, cool. You want to be a part of that nerdy site? And I'm like, fine, all right, yeah, all right, let's go.
As I recall, it was more of a, well, there's a place at that nerdy site if you want it, and you were like, I do want it, and I was like, okay.
I do. Yeah, you were telling me about like everything, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, man. Like of course, like as we've talked about before, like what was supposed to be like my more like advisory and support role has like definitely evolved into a more full-time status for it, but yeah,
it's like, again, because there was pretty much no movies for the last year and a half, like very few that came out and really made a splash. It is like, yeah, that's pretty much where movies left off is back here in this Rise of Skywalker timeline of things.
And it's wild they decided to postpone the Oscars for a year instead of just giving the best picture of the year to Bad Boys or Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah. No,
Parasite won Best Picture that year.
Parasite won Best Picture for that year, but yeah,
right?
Did they not have one for last year?
I don't think they had
2020.
Yeah,
they
2020
postponed it because they were just like, there's not enough good movies.
Yeah, all right. We have a runtime of 2 hours and 21 minutes on this one. And in the Star Wars film timeline of things, Solo, A Star Wars Story had come out May 15th of 2018. Then, of course, we had The Rise of Skywalker December 20th, 2019. And that's it so far. We have not had a new Star Wars film since Rise of Skywalker. The next one currently slated with a date is potentially going to be Rogue Squadron, December 22nd, 2023. What do you got, Logan?
I just wanted to give an update on the 93rd Academy Awards. They definitely, I was like, I'm pretty positive the Oscars wouldn't cancel if they could do anything. Nomadland won Best Picture.
There you go. Yes.
Okay.
I do remember
that.
Like,
movies that nobody saw won, which is back to the way things used to be at the Oscars.
Yeah, I mean,
Sonic the Hedgehog was robbed.
That's still how things usually are at the Oscars. But yes, this year
right
it was much more like, hey, here are the things that were like that went to Netflix or that were on HBO Max or whatever. Like, yeah, it was the, here are the Amazon Prime movies. Thank you.
Amazon Prime got
you,
Emmy
Logan,
nominations.
for correcting that. I mean,
Amazon Prime finally got its Emmy nomination. Good for it.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you look at
Soul's Best Animated Picture.
If you look at it, like, breaking it down by the numbers, I'm pretty sure streaming is like kicking like basic cable's ass or whatever these days. In terms
for
of,
sure.
Like,
it has to be, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. I do remember Soul winning Best Animated, and then also Best Soundtrack, I believe, or Best Score, Best Song.
That movie's
Because
underrated.
I remember
People look to that movie.
John Baptiste winning that, and I'm being like, yeah, good for him. And the guys from Nine Inch Nails, right? They were the other ones that did that.
Reznor?
Yeah, I think so. And Atticus something. Not Finch. That's what I always want to say. Atticus Finch.
Trauma.
To Kill a Mockingbird, yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, Rogue Squadron, per the what we have kind of on the slate right now, is potentially going to be the next Star Wars film, directed by
we will
Patty
see
Jenkins. With and she very much kind of I remember the announcement reveal of that being hey, she loves Top Gun type stuff, and she loves Star Wars, and so she's gonna try and make a movie that is those things. And I'm like, all right, I'm down for that.
That is a sales pitch I am very much about. We get a Maverick character, and everybody has fun names, and they're out there being fighter pilot. I want this movie now. Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. She made 1.5 really good Wonder Woman movies.
Yeah. Speaking of directors, the roll call for this film, we have once again returning to the director's chair, J.J. Abrams, who, as we discussed in The Force Awakens time, had previously done Mission Impossible 3, as well as some of the TV stuff that he came up with. But on the film side of things, Mission Impossible 3, Star Trek, Super 8, Star Trek Into Darkness, and then The Force Awakens prior to this. He does not have anything currently on the docket for future directing projects.
I believe it.
The writers, we have kind of two sets of writers on this one. We have Chris Terrio and J.J. Abrams, who are responsible for effectively the final version that we end up seeing. And then we have Derek Connolly and Colin Trevorrow, who are credited as story by credits because of Writers Guild of America kind of guidelines and stuff. Since they took the first pass at the script, they end up getting a credit at it, on it. Chris Terrio kind of made his breakout success with Argo, and then it was pretty much all downhill from there because he followed it up with Batman v Superman and Justice League, and then Rise of Skywalker. So hooray for the whole failing up in screenwriting that we occasionally
see. Argo is a great movie too. He definitely came out swinging. And
was Chris Terrio the guy who took the first pass at it, or J.J. Abrams?
No. He worked with J.J. Abrams on it. He's
okay. Yeah, no, that guy sucks.
Yeah,
the first
this was one of his babies. Yes.
Did you guys ever read the first leaked script?
We will talk about that.
I think we're gonna get to it, right?
In the trivia. That is the trivia that I alluded to before we started recording. That I spent the last hour-ish adding in at the last minute. So yeah, we will touch on that. So yes. Also, J.J. Abrams on the story and screenplay for this, as I said previously, was credited, I believe. And I didn't check it again. I believe it's Jeffrey Abrams in his early career on projects like Taking Care of Business, Gone Fishing, Armageddon, and then in his more J.J. Abrams nom de plume with stuff like Mission Impossible, Super 8, The Force Awakens, and he does have a future writing project lined up, and that is an untitled Cloverfield sequel. So we'll see what that turns into. If it will actually be connected to Cloverfield, or if it will just be yet another thing that is a project that they buy from somebody else and throw the Cloverfield name on.
Is that what happened with the Cloverfield Lane?
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure.
I like Cloverfield Lane. Cloverfield Lane's good.
Yeah,
Cloverfield Lane's great.
I mean, as I've never seen anything in the Cloverfield verse, but as I understand it, it was pretty much like a made film already with John Goodman and whoever's who's it, the girl from Scott Pilgrim, right? Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Mary Winslet.
Yeah,
that's what Winstead.
Yeah, Mary Elizabeth. Yeah, she's
they pretty much already had that project done in the can, and then I think they did a couple reshoots to tie it into the Cloverfield universe, and then same with whatever the other thing that came after that. So yeah. But yes, then going to the original credits there, you had Derek Connolly and Colin Trevorrow. Derek Connolly, some of his work is, I remember Safety Not Guaranteed, which is a fun
that's a great
little indie movie. I think probably the first thing I ever saw Jake Johnston in. Jake Johnson.
Maybe, yeah.
And then he would go on to do Jurassic World, Kong Skull Island, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Pokemon Detective Pikachu.
Hells yeah.
And then he is currently attached to the next installment in the Jurassic World franchise, Jurassic World Dominion, as well as the Metal Gear Solid film, the long in development Metal Gear Solid film that, as we've touched on in the show, currently has Oscar Isaac attached as well. And then Colin Trevorrow.
I really want to see that.
Colin Trevorrow basically wrote on all that Jurassic World stuff as well. So, yeah. I mean, I agree more or less. Logan has been doing thumbs downs on a lot of the Jurassic World stuff for our audio listeners. And yes, they are pretty dumb.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I have to say, though, like, just keep the guy away from dinosaurs and it works.
Sure.
Like, everything else he does is great.
Yeah.
It's like a big plot point, though, is the problem.
Yeah. So once
he's just bad with dinosaurs. That's all. Giant apes, he's good with.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Kong Skull Island is great.
So in the starring here, we have Carrie Fisher taking top billing on this one as Leia.
Hells yeah.
Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
And then as we've had in the last films in the series, Adam Driver, Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac returning, as well as Anthony Daniels as C-3PO. One of our new cast members here, Naomi Ackie, playing the role of Janna. She was in an episode of Doctor Who entitled Face the Raven, which I believe is one of the like end of Clara's saga episodes. If I recall correctly.
Because that's the Edgar Allan Poe episode, I believe.
I think so. After Rise of Skywalker, she would go on to do a season of Master of None, which I believe was the Aziz Ansari show before he kind of got removed from it, I think. At least that's what it feels like when I've seen it, but on like the Netflix queue nowadays. But
the Master of None, like it had finished its last season, and then right at the tail end of it, he like the stuff about him being not the greatest person in the world, but certainly like he was caught up in
his character stuff came into question. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. During a time when like he got caught up in the wave of everything else with Me Too.
Yeah. So I remember. So now when I see the Master of None thing, it's I forget her name. She was H in Ready Player One, is what I think of her from, which is a dumb reference, but that actress. She was also in Onward. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
Naomi Ackie is also going to be in a currently unaired Game of Thrones prequel pilot. She will be reprising her role here as Janna in the Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga film, and she is currently slated to play the role of Whitney Houston in a film entitled I Want to Dance with Somebody, which presumably is going to be a Whitney Houston biopic.
That sounds awesome.
Domhnall Gleeson returns, of course, as General Hux here. Richard E. Grant joins the cast this time around as Allegiant General Pride. Some of his notable credits being Hudson Hawk, Gosford Park. He was also in Doctor Who as the role of Dr. Simeon and the Great Intelligence, again from the Clara Peter Capaldi years, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a series of unfortunate events. He is the bad guy. He's the voice of the bad guy Vex in Sackboy: A Big Adventure. That was a fun one to find in the credits
cool.
here.
Dope.
And he most recently could be seen in Loki on Disney Plus. Lupita Nyong'o returns as Maz Kanata, and then I think as the last of the big ones we have as new cast members here, we have Kerry Russell joining as Zori Bliss. Of course, longtime collaborator going back all the way to Felicity with J.J. Abrams. So she'd also done Waitress, Running Wild, which Cameron highlighted at some point. I don't know.
Somewhere. It's a great show.
Somewhere along this series, I think.
If you can find it, watch it. It's a great show.
Yeah. And then most recently, she kind of had a good long run on The Americans out there.
She also was in, what is that movie? August Rush.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent movie. Robin Williams is in it. It's such a good film.
There you Junis Swatamo plays Chewbacca once again. Kelly Marie Tran plays Rose Tycho, of course. Ian McDiarmid makes his return as Emperor Palpatine. As does Billy D. Williams returning as Lando Calrissian.
Hey.
Love him.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad he came back.
Yeah.
Like, that's one thing of this movie I actually do like.
Yep.
Him piloting the Falcon again is just awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if I pulled it in as trivia, but him, Billy D. Williams, and then later on I have here noted Dennis Lawson returning as Wedge Antilles. The two of them returning with like a 36-year gap between Return of the Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker marks the longest like return between like for a character across the franchise.
Sorry, they got Wedge back. Oh gosh.
Yep.
That is pretty great.
Yeah. Greg Grettenberg, again, J.J. Abrams' kind of good luck charm, returns as Snap Wexley here. Shirley Henderson plays the role of Babu Frick, who I pull in here because she is also notable. Another Doctor Who alum from the weird one-off episode where they create a band, and it's one where like Tennant wasn't really in it.
It's I love that episode.
Yeah. But she also is probably more famously known as Moaning Myrtle in the Harry Potter series.
Yes,
Which
for sure.
is also really weird when you realize that like she was like in her mid 30s playing Moaning Myrtle
Pervin on Harry Potter
alongside all these young kids. That was real real creepy. But yeah, I remember hearing that and then like seeing her name in the credits and being like, holy shit, good for her. Like, and then immediately like, yep, I can definitely hear Moaning Myrtle in Babu Frick.
Well, now you've ruined Babu Frick for me. I'm joking. You can't ruin Babu Frick for me. He's too good.
Billy Lord, once again returning in the role of Lieutenant Connix. Dominic Moynihan joining as Beaumont. Of course, best known probably from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Or if you were a huge fan of Lost, he was in that too. J.J. Abrams does the voice of the robot Dio, or as I call him, the subtext-made text bot, who's like... sad when you're supposed to feel sad, and then also voicing Colonel Aftab Akbar, presumably Admiral Akbar's son. We have Chris Terrio, the other screenwriter. Warwick Davis returns to the role of Wicket W. Warwick, alongside his little kid in this one. John Williams makes a cameo appearance as Oma Trace, basically the bartender on the Kijimi planet.
Oh, wild. Okay.
Yep. It's basically like, you see a shot of him and he's got like some kind of like thing on his face or something like that, but it's like, yep, that's John Williams. Dennis Lawson, as I said, returns to the role of Wedge Antilles here. Andy Serkis and James Earl Jones have brief vocal cameos at the top of the film as Snoke and Vader, respectively. Then we have a barrage of Jedi voices. This is easily the longest of the cast things I've pulled together ever. But in the Be With Me segment at the end, we hear the voice of Hayden Christensen as Anakin, Olivia Diabo as Luminara Unduli, Ashley Eckstein as Ahsoka Tano, Jennifer Hale as Isla Sakura, Samuel L. Jackson returning as Mace Windu, Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, as well as Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Frank Oz as Yoda, Angelique Perrin as Adi Gallia, Freddie Prinze Jr. as Kanan Jarrus, and Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn. And then you have a series of uncredited cameos here. Harrison Ford, of course, returning as Han Solo. Jeff Garlin plays, I don't remember who this was, June Gobint, somebody in somewhere. Lin-Manuel Miranda has a cameo in the background as a soldier in the celebration at the end. Ed Sheeran is once again a stormtrooper. Kevin Smith is somewhere on Kijimi as an inhabitant of Kijimi from when he visited the set. And then Carl Urban is another uncredited stormtrooper. And that's it. That's what I got for the cast of this one. Big old, way too many people, and some people that definitely should not have been in there. But I do like that like cast of Jedi voices, especially the abundance of like Clone Wars saga people, kind of making their like. Because if it had just been like, here are the Jedi that you know from the movies, it would have been like, here's 4 names. So appreciate that filled things out a little bit. They have a bad feeling about this. Anybody know where this came from? Who says it in this one?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I watched this last week, guys. Sorry.
All good. It is Lando when the TIE fighters are not the TIE fighter, but the stormtroopers are arriving at the planet where the big old party's going on. Lando looks out the little window of his little tractor ship thing, whatever, and says,
his RV camper.
I've got a bad feeling about this. Yeah. In the galactic timeline of things, this takes place in the year 35 ABY after the Battle of Yavin, a total of 67 years following the events of The Phantom Menace, which took place in 32 BBY. There isn't much beyond this point in the timeline of things, but looking at the Wikipedia official galactic timeline of things, this one jumped out at me and I thought it was funny. It is listed as sometime thereafter. A will is appointed by other wills with chronicling events that transpired in the galaxy into the Journal of the Wills. After extensive research on all things related to the subject and a lifetime of preparation, the will begins recording events of the Galactic Civil War into the journal in the presence of a second will. The second will is unsatisfied with the first's writing and leaves to write an episode on how Chewbacca's family celebrated Life Day in a personal journal. The Journal of the Wills is read to an audience of extragalactic species situated far away from the galaxy about the events that occurred there during the distant past. And that is from the novel, From a Certain Point of View, the story from that called The Wills, of course, in reference not only to the long fabled Journal of the Wills, the original kind of one of the original titles of the Star Wars saga, but then of course a nod to the much maligned Christmas special from the early days. This was the third highest domestic grossing film of 2019. Anybody want to take guesses on the two movies that beat it out that year?
Bad Boys for Life.
That was 2020.
Oh, that's 2020. Oh, so 2019. I'm gonna say
Avengers Endgame.
That is one of them. That was number one.
Yeah.
That was a pretty
Home?
smooth number one. Far From Home was not. Far From Home did not beat Star Wars.
Should have known. I didn't go see Far From Home in theaters. I'm the problem.
It was another Disney film.
Oh, okay.
No,
that could mean Frozen 2.
Frozen 2, yeah, right? No.
Nope.
Oh.
No.
Damn. That first one made $1 billion too. I thought that Frozen 2 probably would have done well.
Yeah, this is domestic gross specifically, so the $1 billion is all the international markets and stuff. It was The Lion King. It was the
really?
second animated Lion King movie, not the live action animated because there's no real live action in that movie. But yes, the Lion King was the number 2 movie of that year.
I feel like it didn't do that well. I feel like that's surprising.
No, it did super well.
No,
it did crazy well.
Not in our circles, but in the circles with lots of kids paying movie money to go see those movies over and over again, it did very well.
And to be fair, it's the first time that it had a majority black cast, and there's a lot of things that are actually really cool about it. But I saw it. It's cool. It's good. It's fine.
It was fine.
It's like an updated version.
It does not need to exist at all. is my takeaway from it. That is.
It can exist. It's fine.
I mean, it didn't need to. I mean, yes, worse things absolutely do exist. But
we're gonna get to it.
It was such a My issue with The Lion King, which we will talk about, I'm sure, eventually if we do a Lion King episode of this. But my issue was The Lion King 2D animation. The characters can have fun expressions, and because that's how animation works. Doing the CG animation and trying to make the animals as realistic as possible, you don't get Simba making funny faces or Timon and Pumbaa reacting in animated ways. It's just this weird nature documentary kind of thing with talking animals, and it's what the hell is this? So that's my gripe with The Lion King.
It's really animals playing Hamlet. It's great. Why not? You know?
As we touched on earlier, the dead speak. The mysterious broadcast mentioned in the opening crawl of this film was actually broadcast in a in-game event in the game Fortnite in the lead up to the release of this film.
That's how you know this is like this was determined to be terrible. It was in Fortnite first.
Yeah.
God help us all.
As we've touched on in the past, unused footage of Carrie Fisher that was shot for Episode 7, The Force Awakens, was incorporated by digitally removing the background and superimposing it elsewhere. Visual effects were used to change her wardrobe and add gray to her hair so the footage would match her appearance in Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. As I touched on, with a gap of 36 years, the return of characters Lando Calrissian and Wedge Antilles marked the longest time for any original actors to reprise their role. Producers had a bigger role planned for Leia. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy said that Carrie Fisher grabbed me and said I'd better be at the forefront of 9 because Harrison was in the front and center of 7 and Mark is front and center of 8. She thought 9 would be her movie, and it would have been. After her death, Todd Fisher and Billy Lord granted Disney and Lucasfilm permission to use Carrie's likeness in the form of unused footage. Ian McDiarmid had reservations about coming back to the Star Wars universe, especially since he and the rest of the world thought the evil Emperor was dead at the end of Jedi. Quote, according to Palpatine actor Ian McDiarmid, however, it was never Lucas's intention to resurrect the villainous character. I thought I was dead, McDiarmid told Digital Spy in a recent video interview. I thought he was dead because when we did Return of the Jedi and I was thrown down that chute to galactic hell, he was dead. And I said, oh, does he come back? And George said, no, he's dead. So I just accepted that. But then, of course, I didn't know I was going to be doing the prequels. So in a sense, he wasn't dead because we went back to revisit him when he was a young man. But I was totally surprised by this. This was actually kind of an interesting one that I saw. It is generally assumed that the wreckage of the Death Star destroyed in Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, seen in this film, in the trailers, would be on the forest moon of Endor. However, online materials from the sites of Disney Parks Star Tours The Adventure Continues has revealed that the destroyed Death Star is actually on the ocean moon of Kef Bir, never mentioned before in Star Wars canon. So they're not even on the moon of Endor's moon. I mean, like, part of it is, like, Endor was the planet and the moon, but yes, this is apparently on a different moon. I have a lot of questions on there, because I don't know how, I'm sure somebody will retcon that at some point in time, but as of right now, this was at least not on Endor.
Filthy, disgusting, I cannot believe it. How dare they? Disgusting. They disgust me.
Yeah.
This film is just so... on almost every level, frustrating. Like, on every level. Like, as a cat, from casual to hardcore, terrible. The only person I know who likes this film is my sister. And that's because, like, we didn't have the heart to tell her that was bad. She just really liked Rey's girl power, like, moments. And, Rey has some great moments in this film, but I digress.
I mean, like, we'll talk about this. There's absolutely a lot of stupid in this film, but ultimately, like, I'm fine with it. It's a fine, dumb, like, romp through the Star Wars universe. I don't hate it. And I don't find it boring in the way that I find, like, most of my time watching the prequels. So, theories suggesting that Mark Hamill would refuse to appear in this movie due to his initial disagreements with how Luke's story was handled by Rian Johnson in Episode 7, The Last Jedi, even though he was on contract for 3 appearances, were quickly refuted. Hamill repeatedly explained that he had changed his mind once he saw the full story and outright expressed excitement for this movie well ahead of the premiere of The Last Jedi. And after the movie was released, the official casting announcement rendered this speculation completely moot, confirming he would return. Now here's one that annoyed the hell out of me when I read it. Dominic Monaghan received his role in the film as a result of a bet with director and friend J.J. Abrams. While Abrams was working on the script, he and Monaghan made a friendly wager on a World Cup game, the prize being a part in the upcoming Star Wars film. Monaghan won the bet, and Abrams wrote the part of Beaumont Kin just for him. So, this character that didn't need to exist at all in the movie is in the movie because J.J. Abrams lost a bet. For this film, John Williams became the oldest person to receive an Oscar nomination for Best Score at age 88. The record previously held by Ennio Morricone, who was nominated and won for The Hateful Eight in 2015 at the age of 87. The last of kind of the this movie specific ones are Allegiant General Pride carries the distinction of being the sole Imperial officer to serve in the Empire, the First Order, and the Final Order. And then yes, as we touched on earlier, and
before
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, before we do that, almost I wonder if we should give our like initial thoughts in the movie, because like once we get into that section, we're like gonna be jumping back and forth between the two like hypothetical movies here a lot. So I wonder if it doesn't make more sense to give initial reactions on it before we dive into what the movie could have been.
Yeah, we can do that. Sure.
I don't think we should give grades though. We'll save the grades for the end.
Yeah, no.
We're definitely
This is like we'll do kind of like initial brief thoughts, then we'll talk about the leaked draft of the Colin Trevorrow version of the film. Yeah. Then we'll talk about like favorite parts or least favorite parts about this one, and then we'll do kind of the rest of the close of show kind of stuff. So yeah, just kind of general thoughts on this movie. Go ahead, and Logan, you want to kick us off there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the movie fails in everything it tries to do. I think it's like actually just like terrible, but I think that that's neither here nor there. But I think it fundamentally fails as a Star Wars movie. Like I just don't think it understands what a Star Wars movie is, and I think it tries to be somehow both like too many things and like not enough things at the same time. Like the movie to me is like one of the most bizarre examples of like a walk-in contradiction in every which ways it tries to make everyone happy, and I think it just sort of fails in all of the aspects. And then the final like quickfire thing is that like the movie just doesn't make any sense, both in terms I think narratively and also in like the larger context of Star Wars, right? Like I think if there's any movie in the saga that you'd want to like fit within what has been established before it, it would be the last movie in the saga that's supposed to wrap it all up, and instead it like introduces a whole bunch of new things, like destroys the rules we had established beforehand, and then I think just isn't good, right? Like it to me is like the most glaring example of like they didn't have a plan for the sequels. They didn't have a plan for how they wanted to end it. They didn't have an idea of who they wanted the villain to be. They didn't have an idea of who they wanted the hero to be in some ways. And like no one really comes out great from the movie, I think. Those would be my quick reactions.
All right. Frank, how about you?
I think out of everybody, I think I'm a little bit more towards you, where like overall, I think it's like fine, but I also can't downplay that like there is just a lot of the movie I legitimately don't like, and there's a lot that I do think is just legitimately dumb. Like I think there's a lot of plot points or just things that happen where I am just sitting there and I'm like, this is dumb. But to your point, where like what you said earlier though is like, but it's like it's not very boring. Like it moves and there's a lot of action and like it keeps me a little bit more engaged than like some of the stuff in the prequels, and like there is some cool moments and there is some fun stuff like that we'll get into later. But like there's some parts I do like, but I mostly don't like a lot of the movie and a lot of just the decisions they made. And I think it is like, especially when you look at it, it's from not just this movie, but when you look at it as like the end cap to this sequel trilogy, I don't think it does a great job at that, but I mean, we'll get into that too. But it's like, I think that like, I'm not a huge fan of the sequel trilogy as like a whole. And I think it is super all over the place, especially watching them all back to back to back like this. But I think it definitely paints that picture more than like, we already knew that, but I think watching them all back to back, it paints that picture super clearly. And then one of the last things I do want to say about it is there's multiple points in this movie that remind me of the best Harrison Ford quote from the earlier movie when he's like, "That's not how the Force works." Like there's like multiple moments in this movie where I think back to that quote and I'm just like, yeah, like I don't think the Force works like that, but I mean, I guess the Force can just do whatever you need it to do. Like, but I think that's kind of where I'm at overall. Like overall, I think it's fine, and I don't like love it, but I think like, I mean, it's still Star Wars. It's kind of like pizza. Like it still hits a certain level of like fun, dumb stuff. There's still lightsabers flying around and spaceships. So,
yep. Cameron, go ahead and let Frank and me know how wrong we are.
I don't think you guys are that wrong. I think back when we did our first spoiler cast of it, like back after the movie came out, I think I stand by what I said when I think there is something of like in this film, this major motion picture, MPAA rated film, there is like something of a decent movie. If you like cut a ton of stuff out and like it'd be a Frankenstein of a beast, but like there's something salvageable out of this. I don't think that it is. I don't think it's the worst Star Wars movie. I think that it definitely ranks super low. The thing is that and this is really my big takeaway, my overall arching takeaway, and this is on this point on, is so many people brought such a great A game to this film. The actors, John Williams comes out with like an awesome score. I really walked away from this really enjoying the score of the film. What I said about in Force Awakens, once again, like when it comes to like cinematography, like once again, J.J. Abrams brings that 100%. Everything gets brought with its A game except the plot. The plot and story and a lot of the dialogue is basically anything regarding the screenwriting on this film is just like so subpar. It is long, it is congested, it is bloated. It introduces too many new things that like don't even like that it doesn't even it spends so much time introducing things that it doesn't even bother to resolve, because at the end of the day it didn't matter enough, but they still introduced it anyway. And it just felt so. I don't know if there's ever been a more blatant like please like this, we're gonna give you all your favorite things, please like this. You like Jedi and Sith, you were sad about Jedi and Sith last movie, here's Jedi and Sith. Oh, like it's like they're a poor parent placating spoiled children without giving moments of constructive progress. And it frustrates me on that level of just the abject platitude given to so many things to give a false sense that ends up leaving with me a false sense of validation that doesn't ever become really like I said, it's false validation. I don't actually feel validated for the things that I enjoy out of Star Wars, even though I was quote unquote given exactly what I wanted. It doesn't do that. And it plays into so many bad things about it, with an even worse moment of trying to redeem somebody than Darth Vader. Anyway, that, like I said, that's where I'll end this segment from my opinion on it. Anyway, so
yeah, I'll briefly go over mine. But if you want my thoughts, I'm the one that wrote the review back when we did written reviews for this.
Yeah.
So you can go find my review over on that nerdy site. I gave it a 7.5. Like in retrospect, I'd probably still give it like in the 7 range, which is good for our kind of ranking system. But so like the two things that really come to mind for me are, one is, I guess 3 things. One is the early sequence in the film where they do their light speed skipping from planet to planet to planet is basically like, hey, this is what this entire movie is going to be about. It's going to be like, we're going to be going so fast that you don't have a chance to like really, like, we don't want you to really think about what's going on. Because if you do, then it starts to fall apart. Absolutely. So like that is like a perfect encapsulation of like what's going to happen in this movie. The like point 2 that I really still think back on is, in my review, I described it as if Abrams found a BuzzFeed article listing, quote, the greatest sins of Star Wars, and tried to address them one by one with some kind of meta line or dialogue or reference. You see that in, not only the like pushback against Last Jedi, but then again in stupid moments like, here Chewbacca, here's a medal, because fans have been wanting you to have this medal for not the last 40 years, because people didn't care until like Family Guy brought it up or something like that. So for the last 10 years in the internet era or whatever, here I'm going to placate those people. So I thought that was and remains incredibly stupid, and does feed to the like, please like this comment that you were touching on there, Cameron. And then lastly, the thing, I don't really think I spoke to this in the review itself, but the thing I think about, as I touched on last week, is that I think for the most part, Rian Johnson took what was given in Force Awakens and tries to like build on that, whereas J.J. Abrams very much says, well, I'm going to make a sequel to a movie that doesn't exist. And so I'm going to spend the crawl and the first act of the movie setting up why Palpatine is back or how Palpatine is back. Not do it very well, but like that's what my second movie would have been. So now that that's established, we can go from there and finish this thing out. And so it is very much like, to your point there, Logan, it is not and this is something you've said, on this show in the last couple weeks, but like this is a sequel to a movie that never exists. It never existed.
Yeah.
And it very much is like nonsensical because of that. But at the end of the day, I think there are still a lot of great performances from kind of our central cast, even though some of them get sidelined more than I would like. And then like there are really cool visual moments. There are moments that they designed to be really cool, but fail in comparison to. I mean, it is the closing, like Lando coming in at the end is basically the same beat as On Your Left from Endgame, but in Endgame it works because there's context to that and there's history to that. In this, Lando just met Poe, so when he comes in with a fleet of people that we don't know, have no connection to, nothing, there's just no weight behind it. There's no emotional connection. Yeah, maybe if you're like a diehard Easter egg hunter, you'll see the Ghost from Rebels or something like that in among the fleet, but even that's not given like a chance to have a spotlight moment compared to all of the characters we know from the Marvel universe coming in to join Steve Rogers and fight against Thanos and stuff. So like that moment is so clearly trying to hit the same beat and just so clearly whiffing it, that it's like, well, that was a nice attempt. But also to like know the movie you're trying to make. This isn't that movie. This couldn't have been that. So yeah, I like, again, there's a lot of dumb stuff in here, but like watching it, I was like, I'm fine. This is fine. Like this is at least a movie that I could like come on here and, or like I could watch it with friends and we could like joke about it and make fun of it, versus like I would be bored like watching Phantom Menace with friends, even if we're trying to like make fun of it and like riff tracks it or Mystery Science Theater it or something like that. Like this at least has like adventure behind it. It sometimes feels more like an Indiana Jones movie, but it's still it just in the like, hey, we're getting a thing to get to the next thing, to get the next thing, get to the next thing. That's what I mean in the Indiana
Sure.
Jones sense.
I thought you were referencing when she does basically the staff in the attic moment from Raiders of the Lost Ark with the dagger and the Death Star.
I mean, that is an element of the moment I'm thinking. That is the moment I remember thinking in the movie, watching it for the first time, where I was just like, well, this is just the dumbest fucking thing. Like, how convenient that you ended up right in that exact same spot that you need to be standing for that silhouette to work. Yeah. But yes. And then I, as I think we've touched on, like, I think really one of the, like, I don't understand why anybody thought trying to build a movie around footage you deemed not good enough or not worth using in Force Awakens, like why building, the first act of like Rey's story around whatever you could piece together with Carrie Fisher. I don't understand who thought that was a good idea, because it misses so much.
Especially in the wake of them being like, we're not going to do that, right? And then
they didn't say they weren't going to do that. They said they weren't going to like digitally recreate her or whatever.
Yeah, they were going to deep fake her.
It's definitely, what they said.
They agreed they wouldn't deep
like
fake her,
in the same vein.
It's not in the same vein at all. Like there's a serious...
I think it's the same. I think it's very similar. Like I think it's.
I disagree because it's still her performance. It's just her performance from a different movie
in a completely unrelated movie.
Like it's
right?
it's her performance compared to like Tarkin in Rogue One, that is not at all.
Or yeah, Carrie Fisher
that
in Rogue One
yeah.
too. Yeah.
So like that's what people were worried about, was they were going to try and do that with her in this.
Because they kind of did that with her at the end of Rogue One anyway.
Yeah, but at least even that, like,
Yeah.
it was her saying the line.
Yeah.
They just de-aged her.
Yeah, they just used the de-aging thing with her. But like, no, I definitely do not think that this is as bad as if they were to like recast her and then do a Tarkin over her. I like, arguably it works and doesn't work at different points in Rogue One, I feel. But I completely disagree with the idea that her, like, using old footage of her is just as bad as that.
I think it's bad. I think it doesn't work, and I
don't think it works either. But like, I just still think that I don't think it's nearly as bad. It's just it's one example of structural foundational problems with this film.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well, with those thoughts out of the way, then yes, the last bit of the trivia that I've pulled together is, in early 2020, an earlier draft of the film from Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly leaked. So I've pulled together some bullet points of plot points that are included in there. There's like, you can find a whole bunch of this on Reddit. Robert Myers Burnett, I believe, is the film YouTuber that basically like originally uncovered it and kind of like went through it, and then it was later verified by, sources close to the material and stuff. But the original title was Star Wars Duel of the Fates. And
such a better movie.
And the draft that was referenced in this leak was dated 1 week prior to Carrie Fisher's passing. The opening crawl was as follows. The dead speak. Wait, no, that's the wrong one. The iron grip of the First Order has spread to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Only a few scattered planets remain unoccupied. Traitorous acts are punishable by death. Determined to suffocate a growing unrest, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren has silenced all communication between neighboring systems. Led by General Leo Organa, the Resistance has planned a secret mission to prevent their annihilation and forge a path to freedom. And then the movie would open with BB-8 and Rose joining Finn and Poe on a planet that was basically a First Order shipyard, and they were going to steal a Star Destroyer. Rey eventually joins them somewhere in there. There's a point later on in the film where kind of the team splits up into two parties. Rose, Finn, R2-D2, and C-3PO go to Coruscant to ignite a beacon in the Jedi Temple that will call the galaxy to war, while Rey, Poe, and Chewbacca go off and have their own unspecified mission to help what Rey was trying to uncover. That detail was never kind of like, or has not been really explored. The Coruscant team is captured. Rose is interrogated by now Chancellor Hux. And while that's going on, Finn leads an uprising of defecting stormtroopers, one of whom recognized him from he sees one of them with his helmet off, and he's like, I know you, FN, blah, blah, blah. By the end of the movie, they are Rose and Finn are leading Force-sensitive youth to Rey to train the next generation of whatever the Jedi would become, including apparently Broom Boy from the end of Last Jedi. Rose was an active character throughout the film compared to her 76 seconds that she gets of screen time in The Rise of Skywalker. No Palpatine. He's mentioned at one point in the screenplay, but not as a physical presence. And Coruscant has seen better days compared to the heyday of the prequels and stuff. One of the articles I saw was basically describing it as like New York in the 70s. So a la Joker that you kind of got. Meanwhile, while all that's going on, Kylo Ren has effectively pulled a Luke and disappeared and is in Vader's old castle on Mustafar, haunted by the Force ghost of Luke Skywalker. And basically Luke throughout the film is kind of playing like a dual role of like haunting Kylo and trying to like get Ben Solo to come to the light, and also training Rey. So that would have been, I suppose, an interesting dichotomy. Kylo Ren comes into contact with Tor Valum, who was a generations old Sith that was a teacher of Palpatine via a Sith holocron, and basically still wants to Kylo Ren still basically wants to end the Jedi and the Sith, still get rid of it all, tear it all down, and rule over everybody. Rey created a double-bladed lightsaber using her staff as well as the remains of the Anakin Luke Skywalker saber that had been split in two in the previous film. She thinks there's still good in Kylo and wants to, but also wants to end things between the Jedi and the Jedi and Sith. Between the Jedi and the Sith, between the Jedi and the Sith, just in a different way. It is revealed that Kylo Ren killed Rey's parents on orders from Snoke. They were still nobodies. She is not suddenly a Palpatine. The climax of the film would have been sort of a dual ground and space attack over or between the Resistance and the First Order over Coruscant and on Coruscant. Meanwhile, there would be an end battle between Rey and Kylo on the planet Mortis. Luke, Obi-Wan, and Yoda were there to assist in Force Ghost form. They were all trying to save Ren, but he is too far gone and does not get redemption. And then just a couple of final notes. At some point, Chewie was in an X-Wing, and at some point, Han still confronted Kylo. Don't know how that happened, but those were the bullet points I pulled together. So, yeah, I remember that news breaking and being like, well, yeah, that's a very different film. I am probably most intrigued by the idea of like Force Ghost Luke tormenting Kylo Ren, since there's nothing he can do at that point, and it finally kind of gives the personification of Obi-Wan's line from A New Hope of like, strike me down and I'll become stronger than you will ever know, or whatever. Because I always love the Robot Chicken sketches where like Ghost Obi-Wan shows up and starts calling Anakin Annie, and like even Ghost Jar Jar I think shows up at some point and starts just messing with Darth Vader and doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, that would have been certainly, like, I don't know if that would have fixed things or whatever. I think there are some interesting elements there. And yeah, I would have been intrigued to see, how that alternate universe version of the film would have played out. But
I look at that, and see, here's the thing. I don't know if that would have been a better movie. There's a lot of stuff about it that I loved. I loved that it gave the Knights of Ren were less of these like 10 different Boba Fett's, and had actual like presence as essentially Kylo's, like, they were basically like Kylo's dogs, like what, like, and they
I don't even think they are in that, because Kylo's off doing his own thing. Like the Knights of Ren definitely like interfere, and I think they're the ones that capture in this version. They're the ones that like capture our heroes and get them on Coruscant or whatever. But like I don't think like what I was reading is basically like Hux and the First Order don't know where Ren is. Like he's just kind of gone AWOL because he's going and doing his like super Sith thing, and Hux is trying to kind of like keep things in control
together,
and snuff out any kind of like resistance against them.
I was just referring to them like, and I remember reading about it. People were like, yeah, the Knights of Ren don't take orders from Hux. They just kind of do what they want to, like basically follow whatever like Ren's last order was before Kylo's last order was before he took off. And they basically, there's apparently there's a scene of confrontation between Hux and the Knights of Ren where they basically like, we don't work for you. Like, we're going to do what we want to do, and we're going to do it how we want to do it. And apparently they are so brutal and, cruel that even, like, Hux and members of the First Order are creeped out and weirded out by them. So that's supposed to be, like, their shtick in this film, I guess. Because, as it turns out, like, this guy all of a sudden has to take care of, like, these 10 characters that J.J. Abrams came up with 2 movies ago. And he has to do something with them. Mm-hmm. And then JJ finally gets them, and you're like, cool, what was your plan with them? Didn't have one. They're just 10 Boba Fett's now. God.
Yeah.
I don't know which is worse, but I will say that there's so many things about this. One, it continues on the theme of like, this is a new thing. We're not just like redoing things. And then on top of it, it also plays into, like John Boyega would have had a much bigger role, an actual important role in this film. You know, on the flip side, like, you know, maybe have, you know, Ray and Rose go buddy, and then we get some Poe and some Finn by themselves. All right.
Yeah.
Make it happen, Captain.
Yeah, Frank, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I like a lot of those plot points, and I know we can't say for sure like if it would have been a better movie, but I think it probably would have been, or like maybe it just would have been like it wouldn't have been as dumb, and I think it would have had like some more fun even maybe throughout it. But like those are a lot of the plot points that I would have like preferred to see, specifically like what you had called out with like with Luke being like a Force ghost to Kylo, because that's just something I thought like we would probably get, and even. I wanted them to even go, and I know it's not even in that script either, but I wanted them to go a step further where, like, I wanted the Anakin as, like, a Force ghost to come talk to Kylo, and, like, if Kylo's, like, this super bad guy, and part of why he's doing it, I was like, you know, he's inspired by Darth Vader. I always thought it'd be interesting if Anakin comes to him and is like, yeah, but, like, you know, like, I was terrible like that, but I came back at the end, or, like, I don't want to say he got this whole redemption, but he's like, hey, I came back to the light side. Like, look at me. I'm here now. I'm a Force ghost. Like, I'm not Darth Vader anymore. I'm Annie. But, like, I think that would have been, like, I just think it could have been. And then even where we get to the point where it says in that script where then you get to the point where it's Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Luke. And then, like, can you imagine, like, all these Force ghosts is trying to talk him off the ledge, but he just won't, like, stop being this warmongering Sith, like, Lord? Like, I think that's, like, a much more interesting, fun, cool movie. Like,
also, Rey gets her own lightsaber in that film.
Yeah, because she supposedly still kind of gets the double-sided one in this at the end of this one.
Yeah,
but you don't get to see the two sides, and she does nothing with it. Like, it could have been such a cooler thing. And
it would have been like, oh, so she, like, in a way, she pseudoly has finished her Jedi training because she put together her own lightsaber. Like, sure,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
her entire training is unconventional, whatever. Doesn't matter. Luke learned by, like, a little ball droid that shot little tasers at him. Like, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Well, and I think that's part of the point, too, is because it's not necessarily at this point that she is, like, a Jedi or Jedi Master. She's something new. Like, we're moving past Jedi and Sith. And even if it's the same thing with different flavor text, it's like, I think that is something that's interesting that they're trying to do is like, hey, burn down the past and come in. And it's the duel of the fates. Like, they're on two sides of the same thing, but they want the same objective.
Such a better title for the film to end the saga on, calling it Duel of the Fates is such a much better end title on than the mouthful that is Rise of Skywalker.
The Rise of Skywalker.
The Rise of Skywalker.
I mean, it's like, I'm not like that. That doesn't bother me. I do think Duel of the Fates is a better name, but I like the Rise of Skywalker could have been a really cool name for a really cool movie. Instead, it's a really cool name for a mediocre movie. But yeah. One of the things you mentioned there, Frank, one of the other points that I did see out there somewhere in one of the like breakdowns of this that I saw was effectively something akin to like Kylo in his thing on Mustafar where he finds the Sith holocron or whatever, basically had to do a similar like he fights Darth Vader moment like Luke in
Empire.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, there was a kind of a mere scene surrounding that idea.
I think that would have been awesome.
Yeah. Logan, do you have any thoughts on this alternate version of the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me,
at least would have kept one of your 3 rules intact of not bringing back Palpatine.
Right. I mean, part of it is interesting that we've talked about, I think, kind of maybe in every sequel movie so far, but certainly in Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, I don't like the central premise that the sequel movies are built around in some ways. And I think that Rise of Skywalker definitely does it the most egregiously, I think, in the actual film. This one is still forced to deal with kind of the ramifications of, I think, Last Jedi and Force Awakens in some sense. But I mean, like, obviously it's a better movie, right? Like, I don't even have to be like, oh, like, maybe. It's like, it's a better movie because, like, it fixes some of the most egregious, like, that doesn't make any sense. Whether it's in terms of Palpatine, whether it's in terms of just like keeping the villain at the end of the last movie, the same person now, right? Like Kylo Ren is the villain at the end of Last Jedi. Like whether you like it or not is sort of irrelevant, but like he is the main bad guy at the end of that film, and this movie carries that forward, right? It doesn't introduce a new villain for the third movie in a row. I think that, you know, it does Rose more justice. It does Finn more justice as characters. It does Rey and Kylo Ren more justice. Like it completes their storylines instead of kind of ending it and trying to start like a new one from that came out of nowhere, right? Like it, you know, for the issues I would still have with the film because it's still carrying along the sequel storyline in some ways that I don't necessarily love, it at least is a sequel to a film that exists, right? Like it is not a film that just kind of came out of nowhere, right? And so while I don't think, you know, Duel of the Fates, which is a rad title, would be my favorite Star Wars movie, I think it would at least be a Star Wars movie, right? Like, I think it would, one, be at least, like, I would enjoy elements of, and even if it's not my favorite, I think would still kind of be doing service to the larger story it's trying to tell, right? Like, getting to the end of that movie and having, Luke and Obi-Wan and Yoda all there with Kylo and Rey kind of together is a really cool, I think, melding of all the generations of, you know, Star Wars heroes over the 9 films, in a way that I really enjoy, right? And especially with, like, Kylo staying bad, they're not able to kind of talk him off the ledge, but, like, Rey's able to kind of take up the mantle and do something new and craft her own, like, next chapter in the Jedi, you know, lineage here, versus, I think, what we get in this movie, the actual movie, which I think is super messy and not well done and really just, I think, falls flat, right? Like, that would be my big takeaway, is that like Duel of the Fates is at least a, you know, continuation of what has come before it, and at least feels like, yeah, that is a good ending, you know, in the sense of both the larger trilogy of films and in the 9-film saga. That is at least an ending that makes sense, as opposed to, you know, Rise of Skywalker, which isn't really a good ending to a trilogy of films and is arguably an even worse ending to the 9 films that have come before it. Right? Like, this Duel of Fates at least would be like, oh, that makes sense in what Star Wars is.
Yeah.
I have a question that I came up with while Logan was talking about this. What if in Force Awakens, instead of being like Luke Skywalker's disappeared, what if they're like Luke Skywalker is dead? But
I think that makes it way more interesting.
But then the revelation is like the thing that they have to get is the location of where Luke Skywalker actually is. Like, he's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, people just think he's dead, but he's not, is what you're saying? I mean, really?
Like, the idea is basically Kylo Ren killed Luke Skywalker as well as the Jedi Order, is like the propagation that's been going out. But Kylo Ren knows Luke Skywalker's still alive. Mm-hmm. Snoke knows Skywalker's still alive. And it's like a hush-hush secret that they're keeping down, because if it gets out there, no, the hero of the rebellion of the Galactic Civil War is still alive. Like, maybe he's in a self-imposed exile. Maybe he's just stuck on that planet because that's where he got stuck, because they show the X-Wings buried underwater. Mm-hmm. Granted, he should have been able to lift it. It's fine. We'll move on.
I mean, he does in this one. He pulls it out.
Yeah, he does.
He does it
so cool.
as a ghost. As a Force ghost, he pulls it out.
It's good. Like, there's like I said, there's stuff in this movie that I actually really like and love. And like some of it is like those moments where like Luke does lift the X-Wing out of the water in homage of Yoda doing it in the swamp. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of like really cool stuff that happens, but like, yeah. Anyway, I just had that thought, like, what if the premise wasn't Luke went into hiding or went into exile, but rather Luke, like, people thought Luke was dead.
Yeah.
And Han thinks Luke is dead. It's like, and then Han finds out Luke's alive, and that like helps spur him going forward in that film. I mean, and then he still dies, but that's fine.
Yeah, I don't know what value there is going down like that rabbit hole of like, what if the sequels were entirely different, like all of them?
We just went over a hypothetical script, man. I felt like this was the moment to say it.
But this is a script that was at some point in the works versus this idea of like, oh yeah, this whole
I
thing.
just had that thought, man. I was like, that's a pretty cool thought. I
Yeah.
don't know. I want to share it.
No,
With the,
and
with the
and
class,
I appreciate
all right?
that. I'm just that's why I'm basically saying like we don't need to like
No, I
I
don't- I
appreciate that
wasn't
you
saying
shared
we-
it. We don't
yeah.
need to like do a whole like 20
No.
minutes on talking
Oh
about
no,
this
I
idea.
was.
like
I just wanted to bring up that idea. I thought it would have been cool. Anyway, we're
Yeah.
done. That was all.
But-
that was all I wanted to contribute to it.
yeah, you did kind of touch on something that that I think is interesting in this potential approach is it is giving an explanation, a better explanation than Rise of Skywalker ultimately does for how the universe went from people talking about the legend of Luke Skywalker at the end of Last Jedi to like we're alone in this and nobody's answering the call and all that stuff that like the resistance is feeling, and it is because the First Order made a conscious effort to stop allowing any planets to talk to one another and get the word out
Systems,
and stuff like
yeah.
that. So I'm like, oh,
Just
that's
dumb.
That's,
Which would have made the light speed jump scene even cooler because they're like mail couriers. It's like the Postman, starring what's his name?
a little bit. That does remind me. I meant to mention it. The horned guy that gives them Bulio is the character's name that gives Finn and Poe like the intel that there's a spy in the First Order or whatever. Voiced by Mark Hamill. He did
Yeah.
the voice of that
Nice.
character in addition to returning as Luke. And it's one of those like I caught it in the trivia as I was like writing the thing, and I was like, oh yep, no, it's definitely Mark. I definitely hear that. So yeah, ultimately the Duel of the Fates certainly seems like a more intriguing film, but who knows? I mean, again, given all of the thumbs downs you were giving to the Jurassic World stuff, Logan, who knows how it would have actually been handled in execution from Colin Trevorrow at the end of the day. So like it could have been like nice in theory, but then execution might have still
It would have been great. There's no
left
dinosaurs in it. He's
left
fine.
a weaker
Yeah.
end result.
No dinosaurs. Kevin Trevorrow can do no wrong. Put dinosaurs in, it's gonna be bad.
Colin Trevorrow.
Colin Trevorrow.
You combined him with Kevin Connolly, the the other writer.
There you go. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. So let's dive into the movie that actually is and talk about if you have any favorite moments, or if you want to just talk about like the dumb things in this movie. I'm certainly open to either of those. I will kick things off on my end by saying despite my issues with like the plot and some of the stupid choices they make, I do still think like our core cast of characters, when they're getting moments to breathe and interact with one another, are all delivering incredible fun performances. The Kylo and Rey stuff in particular, I think still continues to stand out, and Adam Driver continues to crush anything he's given. I especially love the nods that he has as a character to Han. Even when they don't make sense and stuff, like the whole shrug that he does. Obviously a direct reference to Harrison Ford doing that in Return of the Jedi. As
So good.
as as much as I did not want to see a Kylo Ren redemption arc, I do think Rey using their like force connection with the dyad thing to do the baton pass of the lightsaber is like a really cool moment. I really like that.
I liked
that
it.
really
I
works
like,
for me.
I like
and
that part. I thought you were going to say the healing.
No,
And
no.
That's when I was like,
I mean,
oh.
the healing, like force healing, especially if you've played the games and stuff, has always been a thing.
Yeah,
And
it's a normal thing.
And there was I remember, because this, of course, came out midway through the Mandalorian season 1, or like right near the end of Mandalorian season 1, and basically like the episode of the Mandalorian just prior to this coming out featured Grogu healing Carl Weathers, and like that was like preparing people for this power that was going to show up in the Rise of Skywalker.
But if you've been paying attention, it's been there for forever.
Exactly. So like that I don't have a problem with the healing. I have a problem with like the life transfer that they do, largely mainly stupidly because of the kiss that they do. I'm just like, why was that a thing? What? Oh my. ugh. But
Listen, I know
whatever.
some people on Twitter who that made them very happy, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know there were plenty of Renlo fans or whatever they like. I don't remember what their shipper name was, but
I think it was Raylo.
Sure, like it's still terrible in execution.
Oh,
Like
100%. Yeah.
there's nothing between those characters in that moment. And it just feels really, really weird. Like I texted a friend of mine because when she was watching it for the first time, she was kind of like texting me her reactions as she was watching it. And she got to that moment and she's like, why did they do this? Why did they just kiss? And so when I was rewatching it, I texted her. I was like, hey, watching Rise of Skywalker and they just kissed and thought of you. So like, it's still dumb. Don't worry.
But I mean, it's poor in execution. So is a lot of this movie.
I mean, yeah.
Period.
That's
like
fair.
it's just one extra thing. I will say I enjoy. So a big reason why I enjoy this entire sequence is because somebody put it to the soundtrack of "I Need a Hero," and it's when he when Ben Solo was doing his big hero stunts, like going through it. He they play it, and like the moment he pulls it out and then gives the shrug is like such a good key moment with that song. It's great. Like, there's stuff about this that is great. Is it dumb? Sure. I'm okay with it because guess what? They were showing us that things could be passed through this bond between the two of them throughout this entire movie.
Yeah.
So, like, it wasn't like the berries or beads or whatever coming through,
and then
the Darth Vader's helmet slamming down on the planet. Like, we were seeing that there is a pass between these two people going on here. So, sure, the lightsaber passes between them. Okay.
Yeah. Just as a fun fact, because you kind of mentioned the "we need a hero" thing or whatever. Fun fact is Kylo Ren's last spoken line in the film is "ow" when he slams against the chain and then presumably like slowly climbs down. I don't know, but yeah, like that's the last time we hear from Kylo. But yeah, I like again I really like the performances that all of the actors give. Even like, you know, new people coming in like Richard E. Grant, like he is deliciously evil, and like it's one of those like, hey, yeah, I kind of wish that he had been a Tarkin type of bad guy for this entire saga, because he clearly had some fun chewing the scenery on that, as opposed to the random like one of those guys we got in each film.
And even the guy we have throughout it, Hux gets done so dirty. Like, Hux gets done super dirty as a character. Like, just his culmination is, I just don't like Kylo. Betrayal.
I like that, especially because when Disney Plus had just come out, I basically burned through watching Rebels prior to this movie coming out, and they have a similar, like, there's really a spy in the Empire on that. So I like that this differentiated itself from that, in that like Hux isn't doing it for the Resistance. He's doing it to fuck over Kylo Ren. Like, I like that motivation. And I like that, like, Pride
it's got real incel energy for sure.
I mean, sure, as you guys pointed out 2 weeks ago, like that's apparently what that guy is. But I also love that that General Pride sees right through it and just kills him and like doesn't give him quarter, and knows, you know, the jig is up. So
there's that.
I liked that, in that it subverts, like, that character doesn't get redemption. Like, he wasn't doing it to try and like better the thing. It just happens to help out our heroes. But then he gets his comeuppance. So yeah.
I will say, I love, like, and here's a big point that I'll make, and like one, and why I like think that there is so much good about this movie. One of the most emotional moments I've ever had seeing a film is the moment when Han's ghost comes to Ben, and that moment is like, Logan like shook his head, but as somebody who has had a very tumultuous relationship with my father, and Kylo's murder of him being something that was so like you know, takes my clutch my chest, like, oh my god, Han's dead, like, and him coming over and it being more of a like the reuse of the line, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. All this moment where it's just like Han is just there being a dad to Ben. He's not there to save him. He's just there being a father. And in that moment of like, because this is also around a time when like I had also like massive catharsis with my father. This is end of 2019, right?
Yep.
I had just come out. I had just publicly come out, and here's the thing: even though I was privately out to some people, I wasn't out to my parents. Certainly wasn't out to my father. And like I was still very afraid of what was going to happen between me and my father, who like we had gotten better over the years just in our personal relationship, but me coming out was going to be like I was prepared coming out for it to be a very big like divide between us, and instead it brought us closer than ever. And like this moment, like, and here's the thing, this moment came at a time right after that, like not too long after that had happened, like a month later. And like, it hit me so, like, I'm in this theater that my brother-in-law's boss had, like rented out one of those like small movie theaters, like in a mall, and they were playing Rise of Skywalker. So we got like, it was basically everybody in this company and all their friends and family came to watch this movie. I saw this and I'm crying. I'm holding back sobs because of this moment where, like, it's just this tender moment between a father and son where, like, Rey gets him to the point, but, like, him and, like, his relationship with his father is the thing that still brought him back to the light. And when you see that, like, yeah, you killed him. Yeah, you killed me. But, like, it doesn't mean I stop loving you. Doesn't mean I stop being your father. Like, you did something terrible and horrible, but it doesn't stop you from being my son. And it doesn't mean that you can't start doing good now. Like, it had an impact on me because, like, yeah, like, my dad and I have had a lot of problems in the past, but now that I'm out and I'm open about who I am, he's there to support me. The wrongs are the wrongs of the past, and, like, you know, some of them, they can't ever be fixed, but they have to just remain in the past. We have to move forward. And, like, I felt like that moment was such a, I guess I would call it kismet. Like, it just, like, it's a greater coincidence, but, like, it emotionally rocked me to my core. So when that happened, and it's like, yeah, he, like, is quote unquote redeemed. Like, I was on board at that point. Watching it again this time, not so much, but still, like, that moment in the theater, like, like, once again, J.J. Abrams, amazing cinematography in this film. Amazing cinematography in this film. That wide open shot, the field of view as it's coming over, and it, like, moves over slightly, and you see Han behind him. Like, there's so many things done so well with the cinematography in this scene. And, like, and like I said, this had an emotional punch to my goddamn gut that, like, is still, like, imprinted in me. So, like, moments like that, I still love. So
that's cool. I don't have that emotional resonance with that moment. I think it's a nice moment between those characters. I don't know that.
Oh, sorry.
Like,
the point I was making was Adam Driver and Harrison Ford knocked that shit out of the park. What they're acting. I mean, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah. It's one of those, like, it would have been, I think, if I hadn't been sitting there thinking, well, this doesn't, like, fit within the rules that this universe has created.
No.
Like, that's where I'm sitting with it. But also this time around, especially, I was thinking, well, you know what? I kind of like that this sets up, you know, where we can come back in the eventual episode 10 in like 10, 15 years. And Maz Kanata has gone on a scavenger hunt for Kylo's lightsaber as well as Luke and Leia's lightsaber on Tatooine. And she just, and like, she
dug that shit up. She dug it up.
Exactly. Yep. Just like,
you can't stop her. Maz Kanata doesn't care about the sanctity of anybody's supposed grave or whatever. Memorial. She'll take it.
She'll kick that movie off a la the peddler at the beginning of Aladdin, selling the lamps or whatever. Let me tell you a story. It's a story for another time. But yeah, just dumb things I thought about this time around. Frank, any moments you want to celebrate or malign?
Yeah. I agree with a lot of what you all said, and I do like that moment between Kylo and Harrison Ford. Like, I'm kind of with you where both times watching it, like it does have that moment where I'm like, yeah, but like, because he's not a Force ghost though, so like, why is he here? But even like, I'm still cool with it being there just for it being like a cool moment, and especially the first time, I kind of got some vibes of like Kylo is almost just like seeing what he needs to see. Like it's not necessarily that Harrison Ford or Han is like literally there, but it's not like Kylo's just like seeing and hearing what he needs to hear in that moment. Like but that's why I think that's a super cool. But backing up a little bit from that, I kind of like that entire set piece on that planet. Like I know, obviously, like, we kind of talked about that. Like the Death Stars crashed into like kind of like the wrong moon supposedly, but I'm like, seeing the crashed Death Star, like
Logan's issue is way more that like we watched it get blown to smithereens, so there's no way giant pieces that big would have like remained intact. But yeah.
No, and I totally agree with that. But I just like I like it as like a really awesome, cool set piece on like a cool planet, and I think they have a really cool lightsaber duel on there. And I know they were kind of going for like a I have the high ground on Mustafar moment, and like maybe the scene could have been done differently, or even been more emotional, because I know it doesn't like carry like there. I think there's emotion there, but it doesn't hit like this super hard thing for me, at least. Like I think they wanted it to. Like I think they wanted it to be like this intense moment when like there's emotions there, but I don't think it hits as hard as they intended. But I think it is a really cool scene between the two of them, and I also really like seeing Rey get like angry at him, like because I love that moment when she like flips her lightsaber around, she starts swinging at Kylo, like how Kylo would swing his lightsaber. Mm-hmm. Like I think those are just subtle little things they do there that I think is super cool. And then a moment that I don't like, that I definitely have wanted to call out, is I don't like the fake out on killing Chewbacca. Yeah, like I think that's so stupid. And I think like if that was just not in the movie, it would improve as a movie, literally. Like because it's like seeing it in the theater in the first time, they didn't even fake me out the first time. Because like this is a point I think I brought up in our spoiler cast. I definitely remember bringing it up with some friends afterwards. Is that like, do you see two ships land? Yeah. And then only that one ship takes off, and then they supposedly are like, yeah, he's on that ship, and it blows up, and like. I think her kind of losing control in doing lightning is like a cool thing. I just think you could have done that in like a way better set piece that didn't involve faking out the death of Chewbacca.
Or like commit to, like actually make it the death of Chewbacca and commit to that. Because that like, we talked about it. Like I remember that moment happening and being like, wow, that is a choice I was not expecting them to make. Because I didn't remember the second ship. Yeah. Like, because it's very clearly framed to have forgotten. Like you see it for like a second and then they cut away and you're only seeing that one ship take off, and you only see one ship when Chewbacca is being put on it. So like it's a very intentional misdirect, and the fact that you like the audience only like I almost went to time it, but it's like less than 5 minutes that he is dead. So it's like they undercut the impact of that so quickly that it's like, well, that's just extremely stupid and poor like narrative decisions, poor narrative pacing. Where like it's nice at least still for the character in the moment, because the character doesn't know that they've been faked out. The character thinks so. Like Rey thinks she killed Chewbacca and sits with that for a little while. And then is elated when she realizes he's not dead and he's still there and stuff. But like, it's one of those like that. It's another very poor in execution kinds of things.
Fun note: in the expanded universe, Chewbacca does also die in the book series. He
gets killed by a moon, right?
Yep, a moon crash lands. Like he basically like sacrifices himself to get like this planet evacuated. And he doesn't get off on like in time, but he makes sure other people do. And so he's left there, and it ends with him roaring at a moon, basically saying like, "Come at me!" Like he throws his arms out and says like, "Come at me, bro!" But in Wookiee, and then the moon crashes into him, and he dies. And Han blames his son. It's really tumultuous and really like there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. It's far more impactful than the 5 minutes we thought Chewbacca was dead.
And that's in the Legends stuff you're saying?
Well, not in canon now. Obviously. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So it's in the Legends like stuff. Okay.
Yeah. I guess technically it's still you still call it Legends. But it's also in the universe and timeline where Han and Leia have 3 kids,
right?
Not just one.
That's what I'm saying. Like that, the pre-Disney stuff is the Legends content or whatever versus like the current canon.
Yeah, I guess me saying the original expanded universe just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
I just gotta start saying Legends.
Logan, I will throw it to you because I know you have thoughts.
Hi.
Myself?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't like any part of the film. I think none of it works for me. But I mean, I think that, like, you know, I don't begrudge, you know, the actors for being given what they're given to deal with, right? Like, I'm not out to, like, you know, slap people other than J.J. Abrams for the film that we got. I just think that it fails fundamentally on every single level that it tries to do. Like, none of it works for me. And, like, to the point where, like, again, when I watched the movie when it came out in theaters, Shravia got very annoyed at me because it was like only the second ever where, like, I was like audibly saying, like, that's dumb as shit in the movie theater at an Alamo Draft House. And she was like, you're gonna get us kicked out.
Yeah, I'd be pissed off at you too,
right.
and I didn't even care for the movie that much.
I had to be like, all right.
You're at an Alamo Draft House. What's wrong with you? Were you raised in a barn?
Yeah, I
know you were raised in Missouri.
Yeah. Close. Yeah, close, right? No, I mean, like, I think it's just dumb, right? Like, I don't think any of it makes sense, which, like, is obviously, like, the big thing we've all touched on, obviously, is, like, the plot, but, like, the plot is sort of the movie. Like, I think, and, like, a spoiler to where we're going to go later on, I think it's easily the worst Star Wars movie for me. Like, I think because it is all the big stuff that doesn't work, right? Like, it is just, like, it's a movie that hasn't seen the other Star Wars movies, and I find that particularly annoying, right? Like, it's just like, yeah, like, the Death Star clearly couldn't be here. We saw it get blown to shit twice. Like, clearly it's not gonna be, like, giant chunks. The throne room's not gonna be, like, perfectly intact. That doesn't make any sense. What are we doing here? Obviously, like, Rey's parents, as I said last week, I like the fact that her parents were, like, nobody. I thought that was a cool idea. But even if you were gonna make them someone, make it be someone that it makes sense, right? Like, the answer we end up getting doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. It's really silly.
And on top of that, it's not even interesting.
I think,
like, it's not even interesting.
yeah, and that's, like, that's the thing. Like, it's just not interesting. Like, that's the big thing for me, is that, like, a lot of the big, like, whoa, I'm J.J. Abrams, gonna do the stuff here, and let's make everyone happy, like Cameron said, which I think was totally apt. Like, he's just trying to make everyone happy and try to, like, appease all these people, and it doesn't work. And I think, yeah, like, it's so many of the big things, air quotes, that, like, JJ does aren't interesting, and they're also not executed well, right? Like, it's like the double thing of, like, this isn't interesting and it's not done well. And that's before we get to the fact that, like, yeah, like, I think the ending is super sloppy. I think it doesn't work. I think, like you kind of alluded to, Trevor, the final, like, here's the fleet at the end doesn't work because we don't know these people, right? And I think one of the biggest weaknesses of the sequel trilogy, and one of the things that I've actually found really interesting watching the saga in the order we've watched it from, which is, like, when it was chronologically released, is the sequel trilogy's really intense desire, really, with the exception, I mean, Last Jedi, not even that so much, but, like, Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker, their intense desire to make everything bigger and grander and more epic and more dramatic and more giant and more planes and more ships and more explosions. And it's like, part of what I think really worked in the original trilogy is the fact that, like, you know, it was grand and epic while still being really minimalist, right? Like, it wasn't, like, over the top, like, at any point, really. Even when you were doing, like, Attack on the Death Star, or, you know, the final conflict on Bespin is a super small conflict, right? Or even, like, Return of the Jedi, right? Like, they're huge battles that are happening, but they still feel intimate and localized, right? And whether it's Force Awakens or whether it is Rise of Skywalker in particular, you lose all of that, right? It's just like, there's shit happening. I don't really know what any of it means. I don't really know who any of these people are, but, like, it's big and there's a lot of them, so I guess it's important. I don't know, right? Like, I think you lose the stakes because they go so big without also personalizing any of it, right? I think that the final, I mean, obviously, like, the big elephant in the room is, like, Emperor Palpatine being in the movie is just a colossal failure. Like,
yeah, it's terrible.
It doesn't work. And I think, you know, that's no disrespect to, like, Ian McDermott. Like, it's no disrespect to anyone involved acting wise. Like, they do what they can with a silly situation, right? But I think that, like, yeah, like, it doesn't work, right? And, like, that's a big plot of the movie, obviously.
Yeah, and even his
like,
own plot isn't consistent. I just because I just googled, like, does Palpatine's plan in The Rise of Skywalker make sense? Because he kicks off the movie telling Kylo Ren to kill the scavenger, but then later he's like, no, I don't want you dead. I want you, like, I want to possess you. I need you to, let me embody you or whatever to Rey. And it's like, well, what if Kylo had killed her? Like, what if he had done what you had asked
told him to do.
like 2 hours ago? Your whole plot would have fallen apart right then and there.
And, like, I think you had one of my favorite descriptions of the movie, which is that, like, it's moving at such a pace because it doesn't ever want you to stop and think, right? Because when you do it to me, like, wait, hang on, I have a lot of questions, actually, if we can go back for a minute here, JJ. But it's just like, let's just go really quickly through it, right? Like, and, like, Palpatine, that's, like, the whole thing. It's just, like, it's just really silly and also not done well, right? Which is, like, my recurring theme for the movie. Like, it's just silly and not done well and not interesting, right? Like, I think, like, so much of what I don't like about Rise of Skywalker is obviously because, like, it just, like, literally, like, undoes the entire ending of Return of the Jedi, which I find annoying, obviously.
Oh, that might be the best part about this movie.
But even outside of that, it's that thing for me of just, like, it doesn't care about what happened before it, both directly in terms of, like, it, like, to Trevor's point, you had a great analogy last week with, like, Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams and their approaches to it. Like, J.J. doesn't care what happened. Or, like, maybe more accurately, like, he does care a lot and doesn't like it. So he's going to just ignore it, right? And, like, make his own thing. And in a similar vein, he doesn't really care what happened in Return of the Jedi. Or he does care, but he doesn't like it. So he's going to do his own ending. And it's that thing of, like, yeah, but, like, these are things that happened, right? Like, you can't just be like, no, I'm not going to do it because it doesn't make sense, right? Like, especially because those are important movies in the series. Like 6 and 8, a lot of big important things happen in those movies, and to be like, what if we just said no to them, is an approach for sure. But I think the consequences are what we get here, which are really messy, and it doesn't make any sense. I think the Han and Kylo scene is really, there's potential there. I don't really love it. Right, like, which is not to, obviously discount what Cameron got out of that, because I loved his whole, story there, but, like, it doesn't work for me, certainly. Like, I think Kylo, I actually think he's done really dirty in the movie, right? Like, I would have loved for him to have just been a bad guy at the end of this thing, which is where he's set up to be an 8. I'd have loved for him to not be redeemed. Right, like, I feel like we've, like, swung around a little bit where it's like, I liked the redemption in 6, and I don't like it here. I don't think it's done well. I don't think the Han stuff works for me. For sure, unambiguously, I can't be more explicit about this, all of the Rey and Kylo romantic stuff falls incredibly flat for me. I think Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver have great chemistry, but not that kind of chemistry. Like, I don't think it's, like, a romantic love interest chemistry, either in 8 or 9. So I think it's really awkward, right? Like, I think the final kiss is awkward. I think the whole final fight scene is awkward. And then, like, the last thing I would say is just, like, I really love John Boyega, both as, like, a human being because he's an amazing person, and also as, like, his character Finn is great, right? And, like, I really liked Rose too. I think she's, good and has potential, right, in 8, and I'd love to see that explored more, right? And it's sort of why I said last week, it's like, I would have rather Finn just died in 8, because this is just such a weird movie for him in a lot of ways. Like, he doesn't really get a good ending. And Rose certainly doesn't, right? And even, like, Oscar, like, it's just that thing of, like,
doesn't. Nobody, like, like, they're such
everybody's
afterthoughts.
left
It's so bad.
Yeah, everyone's left better. Like, every main character at the end of 8 than 9, right? And, like, we watched last week's episode. I'm not in love with Last Jedi at all, but, like, I think at least gave these characters a good point to end that movie off, where you could take them forward in a sequel or end it there if you wanted to, right? And I think here it's just like none of the characters really feel like they were resolved by the end of the thing. And like obviously the final scene is dumb. Like it doesn't make you like you're not a Skywalker, but also like if you're taking her as a moniker, it's weird and like why you're asking what her last name is. That's like never been a thing ever in Star Wars.
So Skywalker's a slave name. That's cultural appropriation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, like there are lots of people in Star Wars who don't have last names. In fact, like close to 50%, if we're going to be like, is a lot of them.
I mean,
like,
but I don't know. Like the last two movies have really established that like somebody's going to ask you your last name, and if you don't have a good answer,
yeah, right,
they're going to come up with one for you.
But
they're going to be really
that's such a problem I have with like both this movie and the other one is I'm like, why are people so obsessed with people's fucking last names?
It's never mattered before.
Make one up for you.
And nobody cares about Finn's. Like Finn doesn't get a last name.
Yeah, totally.
He has numbers in his name and nobody cares.
Yeah.
He doesn't Finn is a moniker from his like first order designation. It's not even a name.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like, hey, my bro gave me this name. Chill, don't worry about it. Finn Solo, is that his gonna be in like the expanded universe? They're gonna do that for him.
There you go.
Yeah,
because he's flying. Alone, huh? You're alone, huh?
Yeah, he's flying solo.
Alone, solo. We'll get to that in another film.
We'll get to that in what 2 weeks here, but
3 weeks, yeah.
3 weeks, yeah. But yeah, I will say one thing I was really, and this is a prediction that I had since the end of 1, when we got the that turns out that the kind of central Jedi character, Force using character, was going to be Rey. My thought was, okay, they really did the whole subversion of like what your typical expectations were because of trailers. So my thought was, when we saw the trailer for this film and John Boyega is leading a group of people on a horse, I was like, oh my gosh, it's true. He's the princess character. Like Poe, we're like, oh, he flies the X-Wing, but then it turns out he's like more of a smuggler kind of dude. Whatever, that doesn't matter. The important thing is that, because that doesn't really make sense.
Which is dumb.
The important thing is that like Finn could have been our prince, our like taken from his home and his people, comes back as an adult, reclaims his birthright and legacy, and leads them to overthrowing the final order, and like, you know, as like a great reclamation of legacy, and like, you know, like let's like talk facts. Like John Boyega is black. He's he is of African Nigerian descent. Like that could have been a really awesome, cool thing on multiple levels, meta wise, and like how it impacts people in real life, and how inspirational it could have felt and been if done properly. And it could have been an awesome moment for it being then, Ray, I have something to tell you. Doesn't ever get to tell her. Apparently it's, I'm Force sensitive. And like, but everybody and their dog thought it was, I'm in love with you. Like, cause that's what we expected out of a moment like that. Cause this film doesn't telegraph anything well.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have, I just thought it would have been
the dynamic we've been given for 2 movies is that there's like a romantic connection. And then here it's just like, what if it's with Kylo Ren instead though?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my point was like, I would have thought it would have been really cool to be like, oh, also we're going to get like, oh, they're on like horses and stuff. Cool. Like, so we're going to throw a little bit of the old, like, you think because of your like superior technology or whatever, like, but we got horses and they're going to like rock your world for like Final Order. That would have been cool too. Like, there's so many cool things that could have come from that moment in the trailer. And it just turns out that they're just other kids, for like stormtrooper kids. And one's like, I'm pretty sure is Lando Calrissian's kid.
Yeah.
For like all the emphasizing they give that.
Yeah, isn't that like one of the...
That's definitely like what they are heavily hinting at. But then there's also like a very uncomfortable, like, just
silence,
because Billy D. Williams is like so suave and like charming, there's also this weird like, is he hitting on her?
Hitting on her?
That's how I read it.
It's
like,
that's
I got a daughter out there.
Thing. But like,
she's probably
like,
around your age. Creepy.
Yeah.
Like there's a, like, once again, these are things that I think could have been set up better over the course of all 3 movies if they had a plan. If we're gonna like, what a great way of like this evolution of this character who didn't have a name in the first film, who had a serial number for a name, coming into like this like royal birthright in the last film would have been a great arc for Finn over the course of 3 films. But no, we can't have any of that. We can't have good things. We have to have mediocre things at best,
I
or
mean,
things that personally
we
impacted me
lost the good
deeply.
right.
like I mean, I certainly never like inferred that there was any kind of like noble like past to
Neither
him.
did I.
So,
Neither did I. But I
like,
just thought it would be cool.
You've come up with this whole other like backstory. I'm like, I don't know
I've
anything
been sitting
that
on
would've-
this for years.
Okay.
I've been sitting on this for years. Okay, and I haven't had a platform to talk about it until this moment.
But
so I'm
weirdly,
talking
when
about it.
you were like, I thought he was going to be like a princess moment. I like immediately in my head, I'm like, oh, he does kind of have like he does fill a little bit of the role that Leia filled in Return of the Jedi. In like
Right.
instead of Ewoks, it's these these horse-like creatures or whatever, and it is like overtaking a superior force with like inferior technology and stuff. I'm like, oh, that is the slot that he fills in or fits into in this movie, and then especially in the context of like what might have been in the other thing, like there is an interesting little parallel in that he almost still gets that same like leading the revolution of like defected stormtroopers. Admittedly, like they had already defected before he ever showed up, so it doesn't have like quite the impact. And I think I talked in a previous episode about the idea that like they were inspired by him defecting, but that was clearly something I just like popped into my head or whatever.
Cool headcanon. I dig it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the direction I wish they had gone, is because like I think that would have been a much better story for him. Like not only does he defect, like I think they could have done more with like not only the First Order being very angry about that, because think about like the way they're set up. They're like, no, people don't defect.
Yeah.
They're like, we'll kill you if you defect.
People-
but he's the one that
yeah.
got away, and now he's like this legend in the rebellion. And I thought it would be cool if like because they go onto First Order ships multiple times. Like I thought it'd be cool if they explored like that there is this whole side of people in the First Order that were like Finn, they don't want to be there, but they have no way out. And then when they see Finn, they're just like, man, oh my god, like you're Finn, you're the guy that made it. And then like I thought it would be cool if he could get a bunch of people to defect or like revolt. And like I thought if anything that's what they were like building for. But then when the time we get to this, like he does get to lead them, but he just runs into them, and they just happen to be a bunch of defected stormtroopers, and that's what they have in common, and that's what they bond over. But like it'd be cool if he got everybody to like he's this like legend that's like talked about amongst the New Order, and then like he frees a bunch of people or like leads this crazy rebellion. Like that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
And he was the janitor. Like that, he went from janitor to legendary rebel, like that, like legendary rebel, quote unquote scum.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff that could have been.
I do.
They're like, and you killed Phasma in a fight.
I-
like, there's so much legend around him that just nobody talks about.
Yeah. I do want to shout out again, because Frank and I did the episode of that D Plus show on the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special. In that special, Rey is training him to be a Jedi. Like he is clearly, as kind of you touched on there, Cam. Like I want to tell you something is, and you get, I mean, the hints. He repeatedly says like, I've got a feeling it's clearly the Force telling him these things or whatever. And so yeah, that like in at least that fun little special, like the future of him is getting trained with a lightsaber and with Rey and stuff. One other thing I want to shout out and really celebrate, because I was surprised by how moved I was by it, is I think they give C-3PO and in particular Anthony Daniels some really nice moments in this, especially when you put in context, like Anthony Daniels is the only person that was in the entire nineology, as well as, you know, his kind of cameos in Rogue One and even I think Solo. He has some kind of something that he does in Solo. I don't think it's 3PO, but so like him getting not only like really fun comedic beats where like it is like everybody turns and he like sits there for a second and then turns behind to not realizing that they're talking to him, or when they've all sunk in the pit and he's like, you didn't mention my name, sir, but I'm okay. That's a nice moment. But then of course, like his really powerful moment, unfortunately also given away in the trailers, but I think it's one that still, even though we knew it was coming from the trailers, works well in the context of the movie of him. Like he is having to sacrifice, you know, theoretically everything. They don't know how this is going to pan out, so his mind's going to get wiped, and so he has that nice moment of like, I'm, you know, saying one last goodbye to my friends, which of course is also, you know, this weird little meta moment. But like I remember thinking like, oh, I'm surprised that like I don't know if it's a testament to what they gave him or if it's an indictment of what little they gave everybody else, that he is one of the standout roles in this movie. But like at the end of the day, I think it's fitting for one of the very first characters we met in this saga that he gets a nice little send off, and then he also gets like a nice little happy ever after because R2-D2 did have him backed up, and he just missed out on a couple missions or whatever. So yeah, I really liked the 3PO-ness of it all, amidst everything else. Any other really cool things or really dumb things anybody wants to touch on or celebrate or make fun of?
We can go on forever about things that are dumb that we can make fun of.
Yeah. I will always also stand by how just wonderful what is it? What's her name's eyes are in this? Kerry Russell. Like the one little bit where we see her talking to Poe without her like visor on, we just see her eyes. I'm like, dang, those are striking. Good for you, Kerry Russell.
She's always had the most gorgeous of eyes.
Yeah, I like seeing that. I was like, oh, do I have a crush on Kerry Russell?
We've all had a crush on Kerry Russell.
I hadn't, because I'd never watched Felicity or Running Wild or The Americans. Like August
Rush
I
is what got
knew
me.
her in the kind of the consciousness of everything, but yeah, it's like this was the first time I was like, ooh, she has very attractive eyes. So shout out to her eyes for that, I guess.
I also did want to just give her character like a shout out. Like, I know she doesn't get to do that much in this movie, but I think she was part of the movie I did like, because I think she's a cool character, and that's it's another Phasma Boba Fett thing of somebody really cool that doesn't get to do anything really, but like that if these movies have been plotted out better, that could have been like a cool character that we could have had.
Yeah.
Like, so maybe we'll get more from her in something else.
And like her and Babu Frick is fun, and that's even there. Like Babu Frick being very excited to like introduce himself to C-3PO, and then C3 coming back and C-3PO being like, Babu Frick, he's one of my oldest friends, is like a nice little, it's just C-3PO gets some good moments in this one.
He does. There's some good droid moments. Some really good droid moments in this movie.
Yeah.
Also, I appreciated the droid that doesn't want to like be touched. Like,
yeah, I mean, the Dio is very much like, clearly has PTSD. Again, my issue with Dio is that the idea that like J.J. Abrams doesn't trust you to like know how you're supposed to feel in a moment, so he's going to have this droid say exactly how you're supposed to feel in this moment.
Yeah.
I was just like, that's like, how, why?
That's bad. Yeah.
Why was that a thing? Like, it didn't need to be a thing. And the fact that it's him himself actually doing that just like adds a whole other layer of like, I hate that character. Like, I don't want to hate that character because I can appreciate the PTSD that droid has gone through, but also I hate that character.
I also like that character because his name is Dio, which is also the villain on an anime called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is fantastic. Just want to put that out there.
It was also...
It was me, Dio.
It was me, Dio!
It
Frank
was
knows the
also
meme.
another character in Star Wars that I think was like in Battlefront 2 or something like that, and they just didn't they didn't consider Battlefront canon enough to say like, oh, we shouldn't have two characters with the same moniker or whatever.
In the same name.
Anyway.
It's a great name.
But yeah, also I did, because we touched on it a little bit earlier, I think, or maybe it was before the podcast, but I did pull, or I have this little trivia thing, since I just mentioned Babu Frick. The Babu Frick puppet was only 9 inches tall, but was packed full of movements and features that took 7 puppeteers to bring to life. Yeah, so shout out to, like, Lucasfilm doing their thing, and I mean, probably an element of, like, Disney Imagineers at this point as well. Like, this one, again, much like this entire trilogy, I appreciated the practicalness of a lot of this stuff. That there was like a tangible feel to a lot of it. Maybe not the sky full of like Death Star Destroyers that are just like, where the fuck did all these come from? Oh, they're literally rising out of the ice. Whatever. This okay, is very
that
stupid.
that actually is bad. I will say, I forgot to say it. It looked like some claymation bullshit when they come out of the ice.
I think the actual visual effect is fine. It just is very plot-wise very stupid.
It's
I
not
hate all
great.
that.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the old. It reminded me of the old reindeer, like Rudolph reindeer, like Santa Claus, like claymation stuff back in the day.
Yeah, the
Reminded me a lot of that. That
Mickey
shit.
Rooney,
Rankin
Santa
Bass,
Claus.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, think that will do it for our thoughts on the film. Let's go around and give it our report card. Frank, what do you want to give the Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah, it's tough because I was trying to like remember the placement of where I put some of the other movies. But I think for me, like I think like we're kind of on the similar page where like it's not great and like it's super dumb, but I mean like it could be worse. And I really just wish they had done a bunch of different things with it, or even with what they had there. So I think for me, I would probably just go with like C.
Yep.
Like I think that's kind of where I'm at on it, honestly. Like I don't like want to be too harsh and go like much lower than that.
Yep. Cameron, how about you?
It's a D plus.
Is a D plus for you? All right.
Yep, it is. Like honestly, there's so much about this film.
Show.
Yeah, there's so much about this movie that honestly is total F tier. But then there's a lot of other stuff that I would say, like I'll admit, does the Han Solo scene make any sense? No, not at all. It's super dumb. Doesn't make any canonical sense. Did it happen to hit me at a time in my life in which it was super impactful and that will remain with me for the rest of my life? Yes.
Yeah.
And it has like other things. Like, and here's the thing: this movie has been memed to hell and back, and that's great because now it's just meme fodder. Meme fodder and a bad movie. These two things go great hand in hand, but it can't take away from the fact that this is just a D plus movie.
Yeah. Okay. Logan, where do you fall on this one?
I mean, it's an F. I think it's
Damn.
like I think it is just a categorical failure at everything it does.
Yeah.
I cannot. I mean, it is my least favorite Star Wars movie. It is one of my least favorite movies I've ever seen. I think it just doesn't work, and like part of that is obviously tied into the fact of like I don't care if I don't know, any shitty Adam Sandler's movie is shitty because that doesn't mean anything to me, right? And like this is obviously something I like more, right? In the same vein of like it's why I do not like Spectre for James Bond. I think it just like fails. It's not just that it's not interesting, it's that like it's egregiously not interesting and not good. It's like both things. And I think this is the same. I think this is worse, to be fair, but I think it just it does not work. It's an F. Yeah.
For me, I think I fall. I mean, again, I gave it a 7.5 when I originally reviewed it. I'm still somewhere in that ballpark of things, so it's a C for me as well. Right there with Frank on that. It's like I absolutely recognize its faults and will not defend its faults, but at the same time, like I have a fun enough time watching this. I mean, like at the end of the day, like this is the movie it came out where I was like, yeah, there are like 4 Star Wars movies I really enjoy and 4 that I don't, and then like one in the middle, and the one in the middle is like Force Awakens for me, where it's like I enjoy it some days, and then other days I'm just like, but it's so derivative of the things that came before that like I get annoyed by it. So it's like the original trilogy and Jedi for me, and then the sequel trilogy and this are in like the bad camp. It's it's the kind of thing I mean we'll sit down and do like, hey, what is everybody's like personal rankings of all these movies, at the last episode or whatever.
I've been going over mine every week, right? Yeah.
But for me, it falls in the same kind of camp that I typically do with like Final Fantasies, where I'm like, there are the ones that I like, and then I certainly have like my top rankings among those, and then there are ones that I really don't like. And then there's like everything else that's like bleh in the middle. And this is more bleh in the middle for me than like in the really don't like category, but it's, on the bottom rungs of everything. So it's a whatever. It's a fine. And yeah, gets a C from me. So yeah, now we come to the ranking of things. So just as a refresher, our number 8 is Attack of the Clones. Number 7 is The Phantom Menace. Number 6 is Revenge of the Sith. Number 5 is The Last Jedi. Number 4 is The Force Awakens. Number 3 is A New Hope. Number 2, The Empire Strikes Back. And our number 1 is Return of the Jedi. Clearly it's not going... I mean, I won't even like venture a guess that anybody's gonna want to put it above Last Jedi. So it's definitely down in prequel territory. Whether or not, I mean, so from Logan, it's clearly a number 9, bottom of the barrel. Cameron, I guess you with the D plus, where would you put it in our rankings of things?
I would put above episode 2, and that's it.
Yep. So between Attack of the Clones and the Phantom Menace. Frank, how about you?
I think that's pretty much where I'm at. Like, if you ask me on a different day, I might also go above Phantom Menace, but it definitely how I've been feeling since I watched the movie and how I feel right now. I'm kind of with Cam, where I would just put this kind of above Attack of the Clones. And I mean, maybe in a different day, I might put it above all the prequels, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, as I think I said, like, I mean, for me, I would put it firmly at, what would that be, number 6? Yeah, because I would rather watch this than any of the prequels anytime. Just because it's like at least I'm not going to be bored by this. And it's something I don't have to pay too much attention to and whatever. And maybe that is, an indictment of itself, is that like I'm saying I don't have to be bored by Star Wars is praise, instead of being like, hey, I really want to watch this, but I also really don't want to watch any of the prequels. Because not only do they not have like the fun elements of Star Wars that I like, for the most part, there are, glimmers here and there. But they're also just really long and boring to me. So like at least this has some fun elements and fun performances from its core cast. Whereas like in the prequels, I had Ewan McGregor to like hang on to, and occasionally Natalie Portman and a little bit of Hayden Christensen in Revenge of the Sith. But other than that, I was just like, I don't like any of these performances because I don't like Lucas's direction of those films. So yeah, for me, it would go in number 6. But I think it sounds like the consensus is going to be Cam and Frank putting it at number 8, which is, and then my vote would have put it, there as well. So. It'll go in at number 8, in between The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. So yeah, that is the Skywalker Saga ranked. Yay! Now we get to go into the weird one-offs. I'll be very curious to see where like the Clone Wars falls within that, and then I'm certainly curious where Rogue One is going to go, but I'm also very curious about like where Solo is going to fall in this hierarchy of things.
I'm gonna let you guys know, I like Solo. Like I've talked to Trevor about this. I like Solo a lot more than other people like it. But then again, also in my personal rankings, Phantom Menace is higher. So take that as you will.
Yeah.
I don't love Solo, and ever since I saw it, I just cannot get over the way he gets the name. Like I can't let it go.
It's real bad.
I referenced it a couple weeks ago, and
it's not even as dumb as half the stuff in this last movie, so I don't care.
You're not wrong about that. Like I can't really defend.
At least a dude making the connection between Alone and Solo is better than like so much of this movie. Frank, a dude just coming up with a last name for a guy that's alone is way better than half this fucking movie. Okay. Is it dumb? Yeah, but at least it has some sort of sense and common sense behind it.
What's better, or what is? Yeah, let's say what is better. You're alone, huh? Solo, or the dead speak and Palpatine comes back, which is a better moment.
Solo is a better moment. It's 100%
I would
better.
probably pick the Solo moment over the dead speak. Yeah,
it's not even the crawl. It's that one of the worst parts of this movie is in the goddamn crawl.
Yeah.
Well, I think going back to Cam's point earlier, I would be less upset if the crawl started with Luke Skywalker is dead than if it was
there you go.
Than if it was just the dead speak, Palpatine is back.
Yeah, if it's like the dead speak, Luke Skywalker's ghost still haunts Kylo Ren. Cool. The dead speak, Palpatine is back.
Well, that's because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the quote unquote pitch you were making there, Cam, would have been, instead of Luke Skywalker is missing to kick off Force Awakens, it would have been Luke Skywalker is dead, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I thought Frank was just saying like replace it because Luke dies at the end of 2.
Yeah.
Or at the end of 8. It works both ways. Yeah, you're right. There you go.
I mean, and he is one of the dead who speak in this movie. So, maybe it wasn't referring to Palpatine all along, and it was referring to Obi-Wan and Luke and
It was referring to Palpatine
and everybody that Ray talks to. Yeah, that did remind me of one of the last things I wanna say, because I like, it hurt my soul when I made this revelation, but it is like the opening sentence of the crawl of Force Awakens is Luke Skywalker is missing, and the opening sentence, obviously, of this that we've much maligned is the dead speak. And J.J. Abrams literally just made 2 movies based on those 2 sentences, and what the fuck? Like, okay, that's a thing that happened. Logan, yeah.
I did want to say as a final thing that. Yeah, I hate the movie, but keeping
Final
with
note,
what I've said
nail in the coffin. Fuck this movie.
Yeah, no, but like keeping in line with what I've said for 4 years at the very least since Last Jedi, if not 15 years since the prequels came out, or whatever. I don't like this movie, and I gave it an F. It's my least favorite Star Wars movie, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't diminish my love of Star Wars in any way, right? Like you can love these series and also think that they have a lot of shit in them, right? Like, and it doesn't matter if it's Star Wars or Final Fantasy or James Bond or Uncharted or anything it might be. There is probably bad in the thing you like, and that's okay. Especially when you make so much of it, like in Star Wars. And so like I think that's important to say as well, right? Like with how I think polarized and extreme reactions are for the sequel trilogy as a whole. I just wanted to say again that like, yeah, I do not like this movie. I do not think it's good. But also like, like I think I say a lot for the, prequel trilogy, someone maybe won't like this movie, but someone will like some of the movies in the sequel trilogy. And like, that's the exciting thing, right? Like, I like all of us grew up with the original trilogy, right? And like we love those movies. And
Frankie grew up with
my
the
younger
original
cousins,
trilogy.
Sure, right? And like my younger cousins grew up with like the prequel trilogy, right? And like they love those movies and they love those characters and those stories, even while like saying like, yeah, this might not be the best, but like these are our stories, right? And like the sequel trilogy is going to be a generation of kids' stories and Star Wars, right? And like whether or not they'll become their favorite stories forever, is unlike they'll learn about the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy and the EU after that if they want, but like this will be their gateway into it, right? And so like I'll always be excited and thankful for that, where we're getting more generations into this cool thing that is, yeah, like Shiver said, half good, half bad, and there's a movie in the middle basically. Our order is a little bit different, but like on the whole, Star Wars is bad in 500 if we're being generous. So I just wanted to say that, like, it's okay to say things are bad, whether that's Last Jedi, whether that's Phantom Menace, whether that's Attack of the Clones, whether that's Rise of Skywalker, whatever you think it might be, and still love the series that they're all a part of.
Yeah.
And just to read it for the last time, George Lucas can't murder your childhood if he gave it to you. You're just bad in 5. You're even. You had a childhood. It's fine, everyone. It's okay.
Yeah. You touched on something there that I also want to kind of, as a closing note on the sequel trilogy as a whole. I think we lose sight of, especially as we've, we're now 3 movies into it or whatever, and we're that much far removed. But the idea that the 3 central protagonists of this trilogy are a woman and 2 men of color is also leaps and bounds for representation in one of the biggest franchises in the universe and stuff like that. So I think that's another thing that speaks to the kids, the generation that is going to grow up with this movie. A lot of people are going to get to see themselves as these characters, even if, yes, we would have maybe liked their ultimate arcs to have played out a little bit better, or been a little stronger at the end. Like at the end of the day, it is still really cool that little girls are going to get to grow up seeing Rey as a protagonist. Like I love when I see videos of little girls at Disneyland dressed as Rey, and then like meeting the character, the cast member at Disneyland that is playing Rey, and like them taking, like, those are so beautiful and heartwarming and stuff like that. And I love it. And then like, yeah, people like Lando, you got Lando in the original trilogy, and that was kind of it.
Yeah.
And then you got
And Carrie Fisher, right?
Yes. So yeah, I love that representation is expanding in this universe in a very real way. Especially, I wanted to point that out as we are 4 white guys talking about this on this podcast.
I did mention it earlier. My sister does love this movie, but she loves the entire sequel trilogy because there is a strong, powerful female lead character.
Mm-hmm.
Like my sister is quick to remind anybody that like all the cool stuff that she liked growing up had like men at the center of it.
Yep.
And she was reminded by certain people, not me, but certain people in her life that I want to put that out there, that I'm definitely not the one who says stuff like this, but that she could not be a part of it because she was a girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was something that was definitely like still is an issue, like still is like irritates my sister to this day. And her getting to enjoy the sequel trilogy with a strong female protagonist is everything, like just honestly coming out of it, that film. And I'm be like, well, that's over. At least that's over with. And her being like, I don't want to hear it. Like, this was great. It was something so special for her. So I do feel that, even in regards to this film, for my sister to have that like cool moment for like young girl, like you said, those awesome heartwarming moments of little Rays with their hair buns in the back. And they're like, little kids running and meeting the character actor playing her in Galaxy's Edge. It's awesome. Like, we get to have these really cool, amazing moments for people that don't look like the 4 of us.
Yeah.
So,
and that just reminded me of another thing. Obviously there was a big to-do when this movie was coming out about like, hey, it's the first like same-sex like scene in Star Wars, and you do have Commander Daisy.
It's easily removed.
It's easily removed, and that is like, it is shitty that Disney and Lucas like didn't commit to making that like a real standout thing and an element of this universe.
Yeah,
but at the same time, like it is there, and I think that is something to be celebrated, even if it is in a frustrating way. It like they didn't have to put it in there at all. I don't think they should get credit for the making the rounds and being like, look at us, we put a gay couple in this in the background of this one scene or whatever. Like that's not worthy of the headlines for a day or whatever. But it is there, and it is something that will mean something to Star Wars fans that
someone
certainly I think have kind of not seen themselves represented or reflected in the galaxy far, far away. So,
I mean, you just have two main characters in this sequel franchise that are literally called soulmates, but they're not in love.
Yeah, Cameron's gonna go this way. I mean, I will say that like to that point, Trevor, like it reminds me a little bit of like a scene in The Heights, to bring it back to another thing that me and Trevor love, where right like Nina's talking to her dad, right, and it is the sequel trilogy. I think we all can agree is flawed and has a lot of ups and downs. But one I think the currents throughout it that is really cool is this idea of that the people that are in it and the people that are watching it and the actors themselves and the writers, they're envisioning this, future of Star Wars that back in 1976 just almost wasn't even feasible, right? And so I think it's kind of cool in that regard to kind of see what that next generation that was inspired by Star Wars does, and then what the generation that will come from this will be able to do in this really cool, limitless sandbox, and kind of continuously push forward what the future of the series can be, right? And whether it is film or whether it is increasingly like TV, I'm excited to see more people and I think cultures and identities represented in the universe of possibilities that is Star Wars. So that's one of the things I will retweet with you, Trev.
Indeed. All right.
Let's wrap it up.
Extra credit. Other suggestions if you like this. As with pretty much everything, this is a series of the movies, -1 plus The Mandalorian, and it is pretty much the same as last time. They're once again just saying like, don't bother with Revenge of the Sith. So this one is The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Mandalorian, and then A New Hope through Attack of the Clones. But yeah, Revenge of the Sith does not, just like last week, does not get a second look here from your Disney Plus recommendations. Yeah, Frank.
So I know we're somewhat, or at least like I am, Revenge of the Sith fans here. Like at least it's like our favorite prequel.
Dope. Yeah.
But if you're gonna skip a prequel, skip Attack of the Clones. Like if you're just gonna
100%.
skip one and never watch it, skip Attack of the
Yeah, it's
Clones. Don't skip
bizarre.
Revenge of the Sith.
I mean, this is more of an indictment on like how bad the like Disney Plus algorithm recommendations is really.
Yeah.
Because it is just like, okay, we're gonna try and sell you on The Mandalorian. Because that's the Disney Plus thing, and then here's whatever is like kind of the most makes sense of these movies.
It's weird that they don't try to push like the Clone Wars at all, or like Rebels.
I mean, like I'm sure we'll see that in next week's when we watch the Clone Wars. You'll see like, oh hey, if you like this, watch the Clone Wars animated show and watch the Clone Wars shorts, and like it Disney Plus especially very much tries to separate the movies and the TV and stuff. And I think the only reason The Mandalorian kind of makes its way in there is because it is a Disney Plus centric thing and is more tied into this saga of things than the Clone Wars animated show or the Rebels or whatever. I mean, just like, you know, when we do a Disney Channel original movie on this show or something like that, it's a whole bunch of other Disney Channel original movies, no matter how much it might make way more sense if they were to actually plug like other things that those actors were in or something like that. It's just like they seem to have like a tiered structure of like, well, we've got this in this kind of bucket, so the recommendations are only going to be that kind of bucket. Like even like Hamilton, like your recommendations are going to be a whole bunch of other musicals, regardless of how much those things actually like are
aligned,
akin to Hamilton. I will always remember like the when Hamilton dropped on Disney Plus, the immediate recommendation was The Sound of Music, and I was like, nope, that is I mean, yes, they are both musicals, but not what I would think. Hey, you know what? I really like this Hamilton thing. I should watch The Sound of Music.
We have 4 hours.
I did want to make a quick point, and the only good thing to come out of Palpatine coming back is about a minute and 37 second short that I linked in our chat. It's by Worthy Kids, who's one of my favorite animators on YouTube, and it is essentially how Palpatine survived the Death Star. So if you want to go find it, it's Worthy Kids. That's WORTHIKIDS. He does amazing stuff. He's awesome. I love him. But this is just awesome and good stuff. It's a minute and 37 seconds. You owe it to yourself after watching this not great movie to watch this. So enjoy.
All right. Well, that is that's so we do still have extracurriculars. Anybody else watching anything else on Disney Plus? Loki is obviously wrapped up. I did sit down and watch the like MCU Assembled show, which is basically like the behind the scenes of the MCU shows. I watched the one on Loki and it was just like, goddamn, like they did a really cool thing with that show, and it's a really fun like behind the scenes kind of like making of kind of thing, especially like Tom Hiddleston like narrates the whole thing, and it even touches on like just the legacy of him in that role. He's been playing Loki's for 11 years now. He basically talks, you know, in his wrap up, he talks about the idea that like when Loki came out, he was 40 and he got that role when he was 29 on on the lucky happenstance that he was doing a play with Kenneth Branagh at the time kind of thing, and basically like begged to audition, ended up getting the part, famously like auditioned for Thor and Loki, and you can see, you know, audition footage of him as Thor, and it's like, oh, that's really weird in hindsight, but it's just a really cool thing. And I'd love, without diving into spoilers, but like what that show does to set up the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So definitely check out the Assembled if you were a fan of the Loki show. Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, everybody, for joining me to wrap out our Skywalker Saga here with the Rise of Skywalker. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give some love to there, Cam?
Once again, I want to echo watch Worthy Kid stuff.
Okay. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Frank?
Yeah, just a quick shout out to our other podcast, That Nerdy Sideshow. The last episode just went up, and I talked about some games that I've been playing. You talked about some shows you were watching on that Apple Plus subscription, and then Cam also talked about some of the games he's been playing and some of his no pixel roleplay stuff. So I think it was a good time. I just recommend people check that out.
Cool. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie. Anything you want to give some love to there, Logan?
I will echo that. I'll give a shout out to That Nerdy Sideshow. I'll give a shout out in particular to this week's episode of That You Need to Care About, where Trevor and Cameron sat down and talked about all the past week's news for Activision. And I thought it was a very good podcast. I listened to it myself, boys. And yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation, and I really enjoyed, and I tweeted this out yesterday when we're recording this, so 2 days ago when you listen to this. Yeah, 2 days ago when you listened to this. I really liked the thread that y'all had as well from the episode about organizations that you can go support. So yeah, I'd encourage everyone to go check that out and go check the thread out over at That Nerdy Site on Twitter.
Cool. Yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and I echo that. As we talked about, as Cameron and I were sitting there and kind of like breaking down all the news on the Activision Blizzard lawsuit stuff, the thread that you're kind of referring to was all of the charities that the workers of Activision Blizzard, in their open letter basically announcing that they were going to do their walkout, said like, hey, if you want to like support us in solidarity, please consider these organizations. And so I wanted to make sure I basically, normally when I upload the episodes and stuff, I just kind of schedule a tweet through TweetDeck or something like that. And you can't really do threads through TweetDeck. So I basically was like, I know I want this to be a separate tweet for each of these things. And I I pulled basically like each mission statement from each organization in their respective tweets. So I was like, I basically did that like live. I kind of took a step away from work a little bit yesterday morning and put that together. So yeah, I think, and it's a lot of great organizations that I think I hope are getting a lot of support in response to all this. Because yeah, some there needs to be a reckoning in the games industry, clearly, and hopefully those people who are doing the work to fight and champion for the kind of the underserved communities within the industry, they can use our help, especially again as a panel for white guys. I think that's the best thing we can kind of be doing, is trying to elevate and help those people out. As well as, of course, calling out shit when we see it. So yeah, shout out to that episode of That News You Care About, as well as all of those organizations that you can go find and support. They're also all linked within the episode, like descriptions and on the That Nerdy Site page for that episode as well. And then I also want to shout out the Let's Plays this week. I did Death's Door and the first level of the original Psychonauts game. And then also shout out to next week. I'm probably going to sit down with Flight Simulator because I have that on my Xbox Series X now. I'm going to consider I was like, oh, I could do what I did when I played it on PC last year, and like just first thing I'll do is like fly over my like childhood home or even like my home right now. And I was like, I don't want to inadvertently dox myself in a in a video game Let's Play. So maybe I will just fly over like my high school or something like that, or fly over ASU or something. So I will definitely fly somewhere in the Sky Harbor area, which is also like a fun little thing because I learned to fly when I was like 10 years old. For my 10th birthday, I went flying in my grandfather's plane, and he took me up and like flew me around. And I made the occasional trips up to like Sedona or something. And so like it's weird seeing it all again from that perspective, and so wonderfully realized in high definition on these games now. So I'll probably sit down with a Let's Play of that. And I also did pick up the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, so maybe I will sit down and do a Let's Play of one of those games for next week's episode. So keep tuned to our YouTube, youtube.com/thatnerdysite for all of our Let's Plays that go up Tuesdays and Thursdays. At some point, I will get the footage from Logan for our 4th episode of Operation Tango, and then also Logan and I will sit down and
we'll
record
finish up the last 2,
our 5th and 6th episodes of that. And so eventually we will return to that series, and you will get more out of it. But
yes.
Until then, I'll keep making do with all these other things I can check out. So you follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, like, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you do feel so inclined, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, class dismissed, and may the Force be with you.